the ice and fire demon god of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 701. I want strawberry flavored ice cream. During the 3 days before the Hogsmeade weekend, the DA army held another rally, and Lin and Irina took this opportunity to tell everyone in the DA army that Neville had destroyed one of Voldemort's Horcruxes and became the future leader of the DA army. Everyone looked at Neville with a bit of surprise. They didn't expect that Neville, who was usually honest and had no sense of existence, would destroy Voldemort's Horcrux and become the leader of the DA army designated by Lin and Irina. Iwin and others didn't have any opinions on this. They were not interested in this. In addition, Neville's performance in the Battle of the Department of Mysteries and the deeds of destroying Voldemort's Horcruxes, they supported Neville to become the leader of the DA army. But some people were indignant. In their opinion, Neville's magic level was only in the upper middle level among the DA army, not so outstanding, and there was no comparison with Iwin and others. They didn't think they were much weaker than Neville. In order to convince the DA army, Lin even set up a ring in the Quidditch field so that all the members who wanted to compete for the DA army leader could duel with Neville. In fact, those little wizards who were dissatisfied with Neville and thought that they could do it were much inferior to Neville in terms of magic level and dueling skills. Under the watchful eyes of the public, Neville defeated more than a dozen little wizards who challenged him with overwhelming force, which stabilized his position. Soon, it was the Hogsmeade weekend. Under the surprised eyes of Harry, Ron and Hermione, Irina did not choose to stick with Lin, but went with them, intending to go to the Three Broomsticks pub with them to drink a glass of butterbeer. This made Harry very happy. Since Lin and Irina were together every Hogsmeade weekend, there were only 3 of them left in the original group of 4. Irina, I didn't expect you to come with us. We haven't been to Hogsmeade together for almost 2 years. Harry said happily. Hermione looked at Irina with some worry. She whispered in Irina's ear, Irina, you are not having a conflict with Lin, are you? Hearing Hermione's words, Irina was stunned at first, then smiled and patted her, saying, what are you thinking about? How could I have a conflict with Lin? It's just that we have been partners since the 1st grade. As Harry said, we haven't been to Hogsmeade together for a long time. Hermione thought about it and nodded. Although her intuition told her that things were not as simple as Irina said, she believed that Irina would not hurt herself, and that was enough. The group passed through the path between Hogwarts and Hogsmeade Village, and came to Hogsmeade Village. They soon found the 3 broomsticks. 4 butterbeers. Thank you, Ron said to Ms. Rosmerta behind the counter with a smile. I still remember that when Ron first came to the 3 broomsticks, he still had a vague feeling for Ms. Rosmerta, which was the impulse of an adolescent boy. But now, that feeling has long disappeared, replaced by a kind of closeness to elders. Seeing Irina, Harry and the other 2 coming together, Ms. Rosmerta smiled and said, it seems that your friendship is still so indestructible. It's great to see the 4 of you gathered together. Miss Lowell's cup is on my list. As she said that, Ms. Rosmerta twisted her graceful figure and came to the table where the 4 were with 4 cups of butterbeer. Thank you, Ms. Rosmerta. Harry grinned. Sitting around the clean wooden table, the 4 of them drank butterbeer while talking about the past when they first met. When talking about how they met and became good friends who could talk about anything, they inevitably talked about the troll that broke into Hogwarts Castle. And when talking about that damn troll, they inevitably talked about Lin who saved their lives. At that time, Lin was still a Slytherin who was 1 year older than them. Harry and Ron's attitude towards Lin was also vigilant and prejudiced against Slytherin. They foolishly thought that Lin must have some conspiracy. But, what stupid people did they have that was worth Lin's plot? Exclamation mark. Harry, the savior? Lin, who had personally broken Voldemort's carrier and almost killed Voldemort's residual soul. How could he catch Harry and go to Voldemort? Exclamation mark. Thinking of their own stupidity back then, Harry and Ron wanted to bury their heads in the ground. While the few people were chatting happily, Irina quietly replaced the butterbeer in Harry, Ron and Hermione's cups with the fire whiskey that had been prepared long ago. The few people who were chatting did not notice that the taste of the wine became spicy, or rather, they did not care about the taste of the wine. They were more willing to focus on the topic at hand. Not long after, Harry looked a little tipsy and waved the glass in his hand. "Harry, can you please buy us an ice cream? I want a strawberry flavor." Seeing that the time was almost right, Irina interrupted the conversation and said so. Hearing Irina's words, Ron and Hermione also spoke up. Ron raised his hand and said, "I want chocolate flavor." Hermione held Irina's hand and said, "I want strawberry flavor too." After Irina asked for ice cream, Hermione noticed the change in the wine in the glass. She guessed that the wine in the glass was probably not butterbeer, but a stronger fire whiskey. It seems that Irina came out with them for other purposes. Hermione sighed in her heart. She held Irina's hand tightly, hoping that Irina would stay or tell her the purpose. However, after letting Harry leave the 3 broomsticks alone and go to the ice cream shop hundreds of meters away, Irina's purpose had been achieved, and she had no intention of getting up. At the same time, on the road that must be passed between the 3 broomsticks and the ice cream shop, Lin En waved his wand, and a complete magic array slowly sank into the ground. Lin En turned around and looked at Dumbledore, who was wearing a black robe, and said, "Professor Dumbledore, you can come on stage when Harry walks through this road. The magic array will take effect the moment Harry sets foot on this road." Dumbledore nodded, pulled down his black hood, waved his right hand at his waist, and the old wand that symbolized power appeared in his hand. Chapter 702 How many soul hall elders do you eat in one day? Exclamation mark. Harry didn't let Lin and Dumbledore wait too long. Sent by Irina and others to buy ice cream, he soon walked to this road and entered the effective range of the illusion array. Seeing this, Dumbledore, holding the Elder Wand, slowly walked out and stood not far from Harry. Under the cognitive modification of the illusion array, Dumbledore in Harry's eyes looked exactly like Rookwood, who had fought with Harry in the Battle of the Department of Mysteries. Rookwood. Harry immediately became alert and drew out his wand. "I didn't expect that Voldemort, the noseless monster, would be so kind to restore your arm." Hearing Harry's words, Dumbledore was startled. He didn't expect that his image would become Rookwood under the tampering of the illusion array. But soon, Dumbledore entered the role. He waved his wand and looked like a professional Death Eater. "Harry Potter, how are you?" Smashed to pieces. The grey beam of light broke through the air, but was easily dodged by Harry sideways. The wand in Harry's hand trembled twice. He did not make any sound, but 3 disarming spells were released in an instant, flying in the direction of Dumbledore and blocking Dumbledore's retreat. "Hehe. Armor protection." Fainted. Dumbledore laughed loudly while imitating the Death Eaters, while casting the Iron Armor charm and counter-attacking with a stunning charm. Dozens of meters away, Lin, who was watching all this, couldn't help but cover his face. "Professor Dumbledore, how many soul hall elders do you eat in a day?" Exclamation mark. Hearing Dumbledore's weird laughter, Lin wanted to rush into the illusion array and send 2 purple myrtle skyfires to this Oscar-winning actor. Watching the battle between Dumbledore and Harry, Lin felt that he was so embarrassed that he was about to dig out a 3-bedroom 2-living-room apartment. Lin En wondered if he had forgotten to tell Dumbledore that he didn't need to imitate the Death Eaters so diligently in the illusion array. The cognitive modification function of the illusion array would automatically help Harry to fill in the gaps in his mind. But after thinking carefully about the process of communicating with Dumbledore, Lin En was unwilling to admit that he had really forgotten to tell it. He watched everything that happened in the illusion array with sweat dripping down his back and made up his mind not to tell Dumbledore the truth of the matter. Otherwise, he was afraid that Dumbledore would get angry and attack him. At this time, the intensity of the magic duel in the illusion array was still rising. Whether it was Harry in the illusion array or Dumbledore, if they were not careful, they would be taken away by the opponent's set of small spell combos. In such a high-intensity battle, Harry was completely sober. He looked at Rookwood not far away with doubt. In his impression, Rookwood didn't have such a level of magic at all. Thunder explosion. After a new round of exchange of fire, Harry shouted out loudly, contrary to his usual behavior, and shot out an orange-red light as thick as his arm in the direction of Dumbledore. Dumbledore seemed to have discovered something, but he did not expose Harry. Instead, he showed a barely perceptible smile at the corner of his mouth and released an ordinary shield charm. Dumbledore's purpose was to transfer the ownership of the Elder Wand to Harry, so when Harry first released the 3 disarming charms, he could pretend to be defeated by Harry. But he couldn't help but want to check it himself. Harry's progress in the past few years has allowed him to fight with Harry until now. The orange-red explosion charm exploded in front of the invisible shield, and the continuously spreading shockwave shattered the power of the shield charm and offset it. However, behind the thick explosion charm, there is a disarming charm as thick as an arm. This is Harry's killer move. The disarming spell hit Dumbledore without any surprise, and blasted Dumbledore's body away. Even though Dumbledore was a Demon King level wizard, he was an old man over 100 years old after all. Moreover, he used most of his magic power to suppress the curse of Marva Logorn's ring, and only a small part of his power could be used for fighting. This caused Dumbledore to suffer serious injuries under Harry's full-strength disarming spell. Lin even saw a trace of red blood foam at the corner of Dumbledore's mouth. Seeing this scene, Lin quickly waved his wand and used the cognitive modification function of the illusion array to temporarily trap Harry in the illusion array, making him dizzy and unable to leave. Lin then apparated to Dumbledore's side and carefully helped the old man up. "Professor Dumbledore, are you okay?" Lin asked with concern, and he poured a bottle of healing potion into Dumbledore's mouth without saying anything. Ahem. Dumbledore coughed twice and coughed up some blood foam. He looked at the old wand that was knocked away by Harry with the disarming spell. "Lin, the old wand." Lin did not look at the old wand. He just raised his left hand, and the old wand flew into his hand under the effect of the flying spell. "Take me back to Hogwarts, Lin. It's time. It's time. After the things here in Hogsmeade are over, you and Irina, and call Minerva and Severus, to come to the principal's office to see me," Dumbledore said in a weak tone. Lin nodded. He supported Dumbledore's body, and while spinning on the spot, he took Dumbledore back to the principal's office in Hogwarts Castle. Lin helped Dumbledore sit down on the chair, and after telling Dumbledore to have a good rest, he apparated again, and returned to Hogsmeade. Lin En looked at Harry, who was still confused in the illusion, and waved his wand. In the illusion, Rookwood in front of Harry took out a spare wand from his pocket after his wand was knocked away by the disarming charm. After smashing his original wand, he apparated away from here. This made Harry feel incredible. You know, the wand can be said to be the second life for wizards, but Rookwood used the spare wand to smash his original wand so casually. But Rookwood in his sight had already apparated away, and Harry had no way to catch him to question him. Alas, what is going on? Looking at the quiet path again, Harry sighed, put away his wand, and continued to walk towards the ice cream shop. A few dozen meters away, behind the shadow of a wall, Lin En, who had removed the illusion, watched Harry leave, and then apparated away from the spot. Chapter 703. Realize arms are selling well, and the branch's 50% net profit can reach 200,000 galleons. On the other hand, after achieving her goal, Irina did not pull up her pants and run away directly, but planned to stay and spend a happy weekend in Hogsmeade with Harry and the other two. After all, even if she had a purpose, the friendship between them could not be faked. After Harry came back with 4 cups of ice cream, the 4 of them enjoyed the ice cream, and Harry suggested taking a good walk in Hogsmeade Village, and this suggestion was supported by the other 3. Soon, Irina, Hermione, Harry and Ron walked to the street of Hogsmeade Village, and they walked along the street talking and laughing. This is a branch of Realize Arms Shop. However, when they walked to the middle and back of Hogsmeade Village, a sign flashing a faint golden light appeared, which shocked Ron so much that his eyes almost fell out. The golden sign had the big words Realize Arms Shop written on it, and behind these big words, there was a small branch. Irina was also a little surprised. She said, "It seems that Fred and George's arms shop is really in full swing. When I came to Hogsmeade Village half a month ago, there were still 2 potion shops next to each other. Yes, the Realize Arms Shop branch located in Hogsmeade Village was purchased by Fred and George directly, and then connected and merged together. No wonder this store looks so big." The entrance of this branch was crowded with wizards. If Irina guessed correctly, I'm afraid that nearly 1/5 of the wizards in Hogsmeade Village are now concentrated in this Realize Arms Shop branch. When the four people lined up and walked into the Wheel-I-Arm shop branch, Ron widened his eyes again. Bill, aren't you a curse breaker in Gringotts? Ron's loud voice attracted the attention of many people, and Irina, Hermione and Harry also showed surprise after following Ron's gaze. The tall and straight man standing behind the counter, directing the work of a dozen hired clerks, was Bill Weasley, the eldest son of the Weasley family. Bill Weasley had previously worked as a curse breaker for Gringotts in Egypt. Irina, Harry, and Hermione had also met Bill at the Quidditch World Cup 2 years ago. Bill noticed Irina and others who followed Ron in. He smiled at them and then explained, I heard that Fred and George opened an arms shop in Diagon Alley, and their business was so prosperous that they were going to open a branch. But they had no trusted person to manage the branch, so I came back. After all, the civilian arms refined by Fred and George can still protect ordinary wizards to a certain extent, allowing them to have a certain ability to save their lives in front of the Death Eaters. Bill said so. Hearing Bill's explanation, Irina and others nodded in understanding. After Voldemort was resurrected, Bill joined the Order of the Phoenix and became a member of the camp against Voldemort and the Death Eaters. It is not surprising that Bill would make such a choice after learning that the civilian munitions sold by Fred and George can improve the people's self-protection ability and, to a certain extent, fight against Voldemort. Bill continued, of course, this branch only sells civilian munitions, which is also to share the customer flow of the Wheel-I-Arms shop in Diagon Alley. As for the military, munitions that connect to the Ministry of Magic, the Aura Office, the Order of the Phoenix and other forces, it is still Fred and George's store in Diagon Alley that is responsible. Ron asked curiously, by the way, how much salary do Fred and George pay you? I remember that, when you were a curse breaker in Gringotts, your salary seemed to be quite high. I guess the salary here should be higher, right? Hearing Ron's question, Bill's face broke into a sincere smile. Bill smiled and said, Fred and George agreed to give me 50% of the net profit of this branch as my salary. According to the sales of the Hogsmeade branch of Wheel-I-Arms, we should be able to earn 200,000 gold galleons this month. 200,000 gold galleons? Ron exclaimed. His eyes widened, and his eyeballs almost flew out of his eye sockets. This is enough to buy my life. You know, the Weasley family's vault couldn't even save a single gold galleon. As the youngest boy in the Weasley family, Ron even used old books left by his brothers, and even his pet was given to him by Percy, because he didn't want it anymore. There are 2-digit people in their family, including the gals in the attic, but they can only share an old owl that can hardly fly, and their lives are even more difficult than those little wizards from the Muggle world. Now, Fred and George have been learning alchemy from Wallace and Green for less than a year, but they have completely reversed the current situation of the Weasley family. Even the Hogsmeade branch of the Wheel-I-Arms shop, which Bill manages, can make a full 200,000 galleons with 50% of its net profit in a month. It is conceivable how many galleons will end up in Fred and George's pockets! Exclamation mark. Ron felt dizzy. Is he going to be rich? Exclamation mark. Seeing Ron like this, Bill had a malicious smile on his face. He whispered like a devil, by the way, Fred and George told me not to give you the money I earned. They said they want you to be self-reliant. Bill's words shattered Ron's dream. He couldn't help but widen his eyes and said indignantly, why? I'm your brother. Your own brother. Bill spread his hands and said innocently, then go and talk to Fred and George. Why are you talking to me? Ron fell on the sofa, provided for guests in the store in grief and anger, and his eyes seemed to have lost their luster. Bill ignored Ron's mischief and looked at the remaining three with a smile as warm as spring breeze. He took the initiative to ask, Irina, Hermione, Harry, do you need me to introduce the civilian munitions in the store? Harry hesitated, but his big eyes revealed his curiosity. Even though his magic level was high enough, Harry still wanted to see something as cool as all chemical firearms. The same was true for Hermione. As a muggle in the world, she knew the power of firearms very well. She was curious about what changes would occur when muggle firearms and wizard magic were combined through alchemy. In the end, Irina said generously, it would be disrespectful to refuse. Chapter 704. It's rare to get something good from my brother. After Bill asked a clerk to take his place, he led Irina and the others to the booth and shelf with various civilian munitions. Compared with the crowded customers in the store, the number of booths here was too small. Just when Harry was wondering how the clerks could restock the civilian munitions on the booths before they were sold out, Bill introduced, "These booths are all alchemical creations made by Fred and George, and the same alchemical array is engraved on the bottom of each booth. These alchemical arrays are connected to our warehouse. After the alchemical firearms on the booths are taken away by customers, the inventory in the warehouse can be automatically transferred to the booths to achieve automatic replenishment. Although there are not many booths here, they are enough for daily display and sales." Bill said so. Harry looked at these booths with different alchemical firearms and introduction signs in front of them in amazement. He tried to take the alchemical firearms on the top of one booth. After the alchemy booth confirmed Harry's intention to buy, the connection between the alchemy booth and the alchemy firearm in Harry's hand was cut off, and the new alchemy firearm appeared in the booth with a flash of white light. Seeing this scene, Harry and Hermione both exclaimed. Harry looked at the alchemy firearm in his hand. Unlike the ordinary firearms in the Muggle world that attach great importance to lethality, but have a plain appearance, Fred and George took into account the ridiculous self-esteem of wizards when refining these alchemy firearms. Therefore, all civilian munitions are luxurious in appearance, and the gun body of the pistol is even inlaid with several gems. Of course, most of these gems are copied using the permanent copy spell. Although they look good, they are extremely fragile and will break if they are slightly bumped. These gems are perfect as the appearance decoration of alchemy firearms. The cost of these decorations is so low, which makes these seemingly luxurious alchemical guns very affordable. The cheapest alchemical gun only costs 10 gold galleons, which is about the price of a bottle of high-level magic potion. Even the Weasley family 5 years ago, after a period of frugality, may not be unable to squeeze out extra money to buy an alchemical gun. These alchemical guns are not expensive, but they can save their lives at a critical moment, which makes most wizards in the magic world choose to buy a gun of their own from the Weasley arms shop. Those with more extra money at home have one or more guns per person, while those who are as tight as the Weasley family 5 years ago will pool their money to buy one and keep it at home. Faced with such a huge number of orders, Fred and George are not proud and complacent or tempted by the immediate benefits to increase production at all costs. They clearly understand that the alchemical guns they refine are different from magic potions. If their alchemical guns are properly preserved, they can even be passed down from generation to generation, unlike consumables like magic potions. Therefore, when the alchemical firearms circulating in the British wizarding world and even the world's wizarding world reach saturation, the orders of Weasley Arms Shop will certainly decrease, or even drop off a cliff. However, for now, the orders of Weasley Arms Shop are far from saturated even in the British wizarding world, let alone the world's wizarding world. When the orders of Weasley Arms Shop spread all over the world, I'm afraid that the Weasley family will become one of the richest families in the world. This is a huge profit of alchemy. Bill saw the gun in Harry's hand, and he introduced it with a smile. This alchemical pistol is called ZHIJ. When you aim at the Dark Wizard and pull the trigger, it will automatically absorb your magic power and release the corresponding disarming spell according to the strength of your magic output. ZHIJ, Irina said with a smile. What a meaningful name. After hearing the name of this alchemical gun, Harry couldn't let go of the ZHIJ in his hand. He looked up and asked, "Brother Bill, how much is this pistol?" Bill smiled and said, "The price of this ZHIJ in the store is 35 gold galleons, but since you call me brother, I will make a decision today and give each of you an alchemical gun." Hearing Bill's words, Harry and Hermione's eyes sparkled, and even Ron, who had just fallen on the sofa, seemed to have come back to life, and he jumped up and appeared in front of several people. "Are you serious?" Ron asked expectantly. Bill nodded vigorously and said with a smile, "Really? These alchemical guns worth dozens of gold galleons may be a big burden for ordinary wizard families, but for Bill who makes about 200,000 gold galleons a month, it is just a sum that can be earned in less than 10 minutes. Ron immediately rushed out with a wow and hugged a red pistol priced at 89 gold galleons on a stand not far away. It was an alchemical pistol that fired blazing spell flames. This all-chemical pistol was also the only firearm among all the civilian munitions in the store that released a spell of area damage. Hermione looked at him speechlessly and said, "Ron, you really don't want to pick the right one. You just pick the expensive one, right?" Ron ignored her, but held the red gun in his hand happily and said, "It's rare to get some good things from my brother. I must choose the best." Hermione was speechless again. She no longer paid attention to Ron, but asked, "Brother Bill, there seems to be ammunition other than guns on the booth next door." Bill followed Hermione's gaze and saw several round objects on each of the booths. Bill introduced, "These are the all-chemical grenades, all-chemical stun bombs, and all-chemical escape bombs made by Fred and George. These civilian munitions are all disposable consumables, and their prices are cheaper than those of all-chemical firearms. The operating principle of these consumables is no longer to absorb the user's magic power and launch spells, but to automatically release the spells stored in them by the alchemist when they were made after the user activates them. Among them, the all-chemical grenade stores a powerful explosive spell, and the all-chemical stun bomb stores a powerful fluorescent spell and an eye disease spell at the same time. As for the all-chemical escape bomb, it stores a portkey spell. It can automatically transform into a trigger portkey after the wizard activates it, and set the destination of the portkey's space transmission to a random coordinate 10 kilometers away. It has extremely high uncertainty, so it can only be used as a trump card to escape when life and death are at stake. Bill introduced in detail. Hermione was moved. She pointed to the all-chemical escape bomb and said, "Brother Bill, I want this." Chapter 705. The Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts Castle purchase large quantities of arms. Bill looked at her with some surprise and asked, "Are you sure, Hermione? The price of this all-chemical escape bullet is only 5 gold galleons." Hermione smiled and said, "I have mastered the silent and wandless casting methods of the spells that can be fired by those all-chemical firearms. Compared with those all-chemical firearms, this all-chemical escape bullet is more suitable for me." After learning that Hermione could cast so many spells silently and without a wand, Bill showed a look of surprise. He did not expect that this genius little witch in front of him had such a high level of magical attainments. Bill did not say much. He took 3 all-chemical escape bullets from the booth and handed them to Hermione. After Hermione thanked him, she accepted them. Bill finally looked at Irina and said, "Irina, these all-chemical firearms may not be able to help you, but it would be nice to take one as a souvenir." Irina nodded with a smile. She took a nice blue firearm from another booth. It was a pistol that could fire freezing spells. She said softly, "Then I'd rather obey than be respectful." After the 4 of them got their favorite civilian munitions, Bill led them to visit the branch and briefly introduced the operation mode of this branch of the arms shop. It was not until dusk that the 4 of them reluctantly said goodbye to Bill and returned to Hogwarts Castle. After returning to Hogwarts Castle, Harry, Ron and Hermione walked towards the Gryffindor common room with laughter, while Irina, who had received Lin's message in advance, left alone and headed towards the headmaster's office. When Irina arrived outside the stone statue at the door of the headmaster's office, she was surprised to find that in addition to Lin, Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape were waiting for her here. Seeing Irina coming, Professor McGonagall's brows relaxed slightly. She nodded to Irina and said, "Since you are here, let's go in." Professor Snape frowned and glanced at her without saying anything. Irina looked at Lin beside her with an inquiring look. She didn't know why Dumbledore called them, and why Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape came together. Lin just shook his head. He didn't know either. With some doubts, Lin, Irina, Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape walked into the principal's office. It was unknown how long it took until the sky over Hogwarts Castle was completely dark. Lin and Irina walked out of the principal's office and returned to their respective dormitories to rest. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry was back on track. It seemed that those conspiracies and those long-planned plans had all been paused. It was not until a week later that the announcement jointly issued by the Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts Castle attracted the attention of all wizards in the British wizarding world. The Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts Castle will purchase large quantities of arms from Weirly's arms shop. Recently, Minister of Magic Barty Crouch and Deputy Headmistress of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Minerva McGonagall visited Weasley's arms shop in Diagon Alley and reached a preliminary cooperation with Fred Weasley and George Weasley, the operators of Weasley's arms shop. The Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts Castle will purchase large quantities of arms from Weasley's arms shop to deal with the potential threat of Voldemort and his Death Eaters. The Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts Castle will use these arms reasonably to protect the safety of the people in the British wizarding world. The following is the purchase order of the Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts Castle. This Daily Prophet published the purchase order of arms purchased by the Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts Castle. On this purchase order, there are a full 100 all-chemical howitzers similar to Gringotts all-chemical red cannons, and more than 10,000 shells. As for the all-chemical heavy machine guns, all-chemical rifles and all-chemical pistols, there are countless of them. These all-chemical firearms are not the all-chemical firearms that fire spells like civilian munitions, but firearms with special all-chemical ammunition. These all-chemical ammunitions have different functions, including high explosive bullets that explode in the enemy's body after hitting the enemy, and armor-piercing bullets that can easily penetrate the armor spell. It can be said that the threat of these all-chemical firearms to ordinary wizards is no less than that of the killing curse. Fortunately, Fred and George had foresight and strictly controlled these military munitions, and only sold them to trustworthy forces such as the Ministry of Magic, Hogwarts Castle and the Order of the Phoenix. Otherwise, as Lin said, the current American Muggle world is the future British wizarding world. These weapons equipped in the Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts Castle make the people of the British wizarding world and the little wizards in Hogwarts Castle feel at ease. Even if the power of these all-chemical firearms cannot be compared with the firearms refined by Arnold, they cannot kill wizards with one shot. But in the wizard war, as long as they can injure the other side enough and prevent the other side from healing themselves in battle, then this is not much different from slow death. When people were immersed in the joy brought by the substantial improvement of the defense strength of the Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts Castle, Irina's application for early apparition test and early newts test submitted at the beginning of the school year was finally placed on old Barty's desk. After seeing the applicant's name, old Barty waved his hand without hesitation, approved the application, and immediately sent wizards from the Wizard Examination Administration to conduct a separate apparition test for Irina. As for the newts test that Irina planned to take in advance, it was put at the end of the school year, and she would take the test with the little wizards in the same grade as Lin En. Soon, the professor of the Wizard Examination Administration came to Hogwarts Castle, and Professor McGonagall came out to greet the professor on behalf of Dumbledore. What? Hogwarts Castle cannot lift the restrictions on the anti-apparition charm for this school year? Then what will you let us take the exam? The professor looked at Professor McGonagall in surprise, his face full of disbelief. You know, in previous years, when professors from the Wizarding Examinations Authority came to teach the apparition course and take the apparition course exam, Dumbledore would temporarily relax the apparition authority on the Quidditch field to allow them to teach and complete the exam smoothly. Professor McGonagall said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Professor Copeland, due to some special reasons, the restrictions on the anti-apparition charm cannot be lifted. I can take you to a venue outside the boundaries of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry to take this exam." Chapter 706 Dumbledore's Death. Professor Copeland's eyes widened, and he said in disbelief, "Take the exam outside Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry? Then how can we ensure the safety of the students?" Irina looked over in confusion. She did not tell Professor McGonagall that she still had the authority to ignore the anti-apparition spell of Hogwarts Castle and freely use space teleportation within the boundaries of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. She also had the same doubts as Professor Copeland, that is, why Dumbledore refused to temporarily lift the restrictions on the anti-apparition spell on the Quidditch field. Professor McGonagall did not mean to solve her doubts, but said lightly, "I think Miss Lovell's safety does not need us to guarantee it, right?" Looking at Professor McGonagall's eyes, although Irina felt puzzled, she still nodded obediently. Seeing this, Professor Copeland had to sigh, and said nothing more, but followed Professor McGonagall's arrangements, and came to another place outside the boundaries of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, that had been prepared long ago. Come on, Miss Lovell, please apparate to that steel ring. Professor Copeland pointed to a steel ring lying on the ground hundreds of meters away and said to Irina. Irina's body turned slightly, and the next moment, her figure appeared in the steel ring with the sound of gas explosion. Irina's apparition test went very smoothly. She obtained the apparition certificate with perfect results, which made her very happy. Even when she didn't have the certificate, she could still apparition freely. However, Irina didn't stay happy for too long. When Professor Copeland left, after issuing the certificate, and Professor McGonagall took Irina back to Hogwarts Castle, a piece of bad news appeared, which made Irina's joy completely disappear. What? Professor Dumbledore was killed? Irina's eyes widened in disbelief, and she looked at Harry, Ron, and Hermione in front of her who looked anxious. After seeing Harry nod in affirmation, Irina's face suddenly turned pale. Professor Dumbledore was murdered? Exclamation mark. How could it be? Exclamation mark. Isn't Professor Dumbledore a Demon King level wizard? How could he be killed so easily? Exclamation mark. Could it be that Voldemort found a way to sneak into Hogwarts Castle and waited for an opportunity to assassinate Professor Dumbledore? Exclamation mark. That's impossible. If the person who killed Dumbledore was really Voldemort, then Voldemort should have led the Death Eaters to enter Hogwarts Castle and completely occupied Hogwarts Castle, instead of not even seeing the shadow of a Death Eater like now. Hermione said palely. They said Professor Dumbledore was murdered in the headmaster's office. What should we do, Irina? Harry clenched his fists and said viciously, it must be Snape. We haven't seen Snape since the news of Professor Dumbledore's murder. He must have escaped. Snape? Irina was stunned, but soon, she shook her head and said, no, it can't be Snape, it can't be. Ron came forward, shook Irina's body, and said anxiously, Irina, don't be stubborn anymore. Snape is not a good thing. He has let you down for exonerating him over the years. Irina knew who Snape was. Snape had gotten rid of his identity as a Death Eater, and he no longer chose to be a double agent like in the original book, to go undercover to Voldemort. How could he kill Professor Dumbledore? Exclamation mark. Seeing that Irina still didn't want to believe it, Harry said, the whole Hogwarts Castle is saying that Snape killed Professor Dumbledore. Even the professors didn't refute it. Snape did escape from Hogwarts Castle. Even if you don't believe me, you should believe Lin, right? After Harry mentioned the name Lin, Irina quickly walked towards the hall, trying to find Lin. Soon, Irina walked into the hall, and when she walked into the hall, Lin also walked towards her with a sullen face. Lin, what happened? Irina asked anxiously. Lin shook his head grimly, and said in a deep voice, I don't know either. When I walked out of the Slytherin common room, the whole castle was madly spreading the news that Professor Dumbledore was murdered, and Snape assassinated Professor Dumbledore and escaped. I asked Professor Flitwick and Professor Sprout. They only confirmed the news that Professor Dumbledore was murdered, and did not refute the speculation that the murderer was Snape. I tried to break into the headmaster's office to find out, but found that the entrance to the headmaster's office was completely blocked. The entrance to the headmaster's office was replaced by a wall, as if there was no headmaster's office there from the beginning to the end, but an ordinary wall. If I were to forcefully break through the sealed entrance, then the headmaster's office would inevitably be destroyed together. Lin said so. Irina's face turned a little paler. Professor Dumbledore, he really was murdered? Exclamation mark. Why was it so sudden? Exclamation mark. Irina felt that she had only gone out for a trip to take the apparition test, but after she came back, it seemed as if the entire Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry had changed. Irina asked unwillingly, are there no other clues? Lin, you know, Snape couldn't have killed Professor Dumbledore, and Professor Dumbledore, a demon-level wizard, couldn't have died so easily. Lin wanted to agree with Irina's statement, but after recalling Professor Dumbledore, who was knocked away by Harry's disarming spell and spit out blood in Hogsmeade a week ago, he fell silent. As a demon-level wizard, Lin was sure that Harry's disarming spell was almost no threat to a demon-level wizard, and he could even erase the disarming spell out of thin air in a moment. But it was such a disarming spell that made Professor Dumbledore spit out blood after knocking him away. He looked extremely weak and even had to let Lin help him return to the principal's office. At that time, Professor Dumbledore was in such a bad state that he didn't look like a wizard at all, but a muggle without any magic power. Professor Dumbledore like that could indeed be assassinated by a wizard below the level of the Demon King, but why would it be Snape? Exclamation mark. How could it be Snape? Exclamation mark. At this moment, Professor McGonagall came over with a heavy face, and her words were the final word on the tragic news of Dumbledore's murder. Albus was indeed murdered, and we will hold Albus' funeral in the hall 3 days later. Chapter 707 I Killed Dumbledore. After the news of Dumbledore's murder spread out of Hogwarts Castle, the entire British wizarding world was in an uproar. People couldn't believe that Dumbledore, who once led people to defeat 2 generations of Dark Lords and was called the greatest white wizard of this century, would be killed in his own headmaster's office. Who can kill Dumbledore? Who dares to kill Dumbledore? Exclamation mark. People in the British wizarding world couldn't believe that a little professor at Hogwarts could kill Dumbledore, a demon-level wizard. They would rather believe that Voldemort had made a comeback than believe that Dumbledore was killed by his professors. Because that means that the professors of Hogwarts Castle will no longer be credible. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry will no longer be credible, and Hogwarts, which has a large amount of arms from Weirly's arm shop, will replace Voldemort as the biggest threat to the British wizarding world. Therefore, the whole British magic world was rumored to have Voldemort break into Hogwarts Castle and escape after killing Dumbledore. What was even more outrageous was that this rumor was firmly believed by the vast majority of wizards in the British magic world. This caused the British magic world to once again panic, since the Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts Castle purchased arms in large quantities. Dumbledore was dead. Who else could lead them? Who else could protect them? For the wizards in the British magic world, especially the older generation of wizards, Dumbledore was their Optimus Prime. When Dumbledore died, their sky would fall. At the same time, in Avery Manor, looking at the worshipful and admiring eyes of the Death Eaters kneeling on the ground in front of him, and McNeil who told him the rumors that spread throughout the British magic world, Voldemort widened his scarlet eyes. Voldemort stretched out his hand in disbelief and pointed at himself. Me? I killed Dumbledore? Voldemort was confused. He had been hiding in Avery Manor these days to accumulate his strength and plunder the power of the stars for his own use. How could he kill Dumbledore? Exclamation mark. At this moment, Yaxley, who had returned from the Forbidden Forest, approached Voldemort and whispered, "There is another saying in Hogwarts Castle. That is, your servant, Severus Snape, killed Dumbledore and then escaped from Hogwarts." Hearing Yaxley's words, Voldemort's brows relaxed. Although it was also incredible that Severus Snape, the former Death Eater who had betrayed him long ago, killed Dumbledore, but compared with the rumor that he killed Dumbledore, he would rather believe that it was the traitor who killed Dumbledore. Severus Snape. Voldemort lowered his eyes slightly and asked in a deep voice, "Has he contacted us recently?" Yaxley said respectfully, "No, we have lost contact with Severus Snape a long time ago, and he has long moved away from the Spider Alley we know. The only way for him to contact us is to contact you, the Master, through the Dark Mark." Hearing Yaxley's words, Voldemort frowned again. Since his resurrection, he has never sensed the Dark Mark on Severus Snape, which made him certain that Severus Snape had betrayed him. But if Severus was not loyal to him, why did he kill Dumbledore? Exclamation mark. Does he also want to become the Dark Lord? Become the 3rd generation of the Dark Lord? Exclamation mark. This absurd and ridiculous speculation made Voldemort couldn't help but chuckle. He said lightly, "Severus Snape has not contacted me. He is still a traitor who betrayed the Death Eaters and the Dark Lord." Yaxley nodded and said, "I understand, my master." Hogwarts Castle. Since the news of Dumbledore's murder came out, the whole castle has been depressed. The professors seemed to have lost their backbone, and the little wizards were even more distraught. Lin and Irina wandered outside the sealed principal's office more than once, looking for a way to enter the principal's office, but still found nothing. They found Professor McGonagall, the vice principal, but Professor McGonagall told them helplessly that, even if she was the vice principal, she did not have the authority to enter the principal's office without permission. What's more, when Dumbledore was killed, she was still outside the boundaries of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, responsible for presiding over Irina's apparition test. This made Dumbledore's death a completely unsolved mystery. They couldn't even find Dumbledore's body, and the judgment of the murderer's identity all came from people's speculation. Old Barty contacted Lin through the two-way mirror more than once to ask about Dumbledore's murder, but Lin could only helplessly tell old Barty that he knew nothing about it either. Dumbledore's death made many people decadent. Maybe other people can be decadent, but Professor McGonagall can't. As the vice president of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, after Dumbledore's death, all the affairs piled up on her. She needed to take on the responsibilities of the vice president. She had too many things to deal with, so many that she almost overwhelmed. The day before Dumbledore's funeral, Lin found Professor McGonagall. Lin said, "Professor McGonagall, if possible, I hope to give a speech at Professor Dumbledore's funeral." According to Western tradition, the person who gives a speech at a funeral is usually a priest in the church, but since the witch hunting movement in the Middle Ages, the relationship between the magic world and the church can be imagined. At the funeral of a wizard, the person responsible for the speech is no longer a priest, but a respected elder in the magic world, or the relatives and friends of the deceased. Looking at Lin's dark red eyes, Professor McGonagall hesitated for a moment, nodded, and said softly, "Okay." Soon, the day of the funeral arrived. The atmosphere in the auditorium was very depressing. The long tables of the 4 major colleges were removed and replaced by chairs. All the teachers and students of Hogwarts Castle were present, but after they all sat down, they only occupied 1/3 of the chairs in the auditorium. The people sitting on the remaining chairs were of all kinds, a mixed bag, some in rags, some neat and respectable. These were wizards from the British magic world. They came to mourn the death of Dumbledore. Sitting in the front row of the auditorium were the staff of the Ministry of Magic headed by Old Barty, the professors of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry headed by Professor McGonagall, the members of the Order of the Phoenix headed by Sirius Black, and the core members of the DA Army headed by Neville. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 708 Dumbledore's Funeral, Phoenixology. Not only people from the British magic world, but also the ghosts of Hogwarts Castle came here. They floated in the air in the corner of the hall, watching everything that happened here. Dumbledore helped the British magic world too much, whether it was wizards, muggles, ghosts, or magical animals. After all the staff sat down on the corresponding chairs, a burst of music sounded outside the hall and outside Hogwarts Castle. The music was like the fairy music from another world, making everyone forget their troubles and look for the source of the music. Soon, they found the source of the music. Someone came in from outside Hogwarts Castle and told them that in the clear black lake water under the sun, a choir of mermaids was singing in a strange incomprehensible language. The sound made people's hair stand on end, but it was not harsh and unpleasant. People could feel a strong sense of sadness, sorrow, and despair from the music. Perhaps the original book did not mention the specific deeds of Dumbledore helping the mermaids, but don't forget that Dumbledore can speak mermaid language. So how did he speak mermaid language? Exclamation mark. From the sadness of these mermaids after Dumbledore's death, it is not difficult to guess that Dumbledore had helped the mermaids a lot. Hagrid sobbed silently, and he placed a white coffin in front of everyone. They couldn't find Dumbledore's body, so they could only use this white coffin to replace Dumbledore. At this time, Lin, wearing a black suit, came to the white coffin with a heavy face. He gently touched his throat with his wand and cast a loud voice spell. Everyone, at the funeral of Mr. Albus Dumbledore, in this sad moment, I want to share a story with you, Lin said softly. Everyone was looking at Lin En. Even though it seemed inappropriate to tell a story at Dumbledore's funeral, they all had a vague expectation that what Lin En wanted to say might not be as simple as just a story. Lin En spoke slowly. There is a great man in the wizarding world. When the world was facing an incurable pain, he made a decision. He wove together the hopes of all the people in the world. connected people's desire for peace with each other, and then carried the burden on his own body. He created a giant called Spiritual Adam. From then on, the giant stood between heaven and earth, and became the pillar of peace and hope for the entire wizarding world. In return, wizards found it difficult to move forward, and could not move forward. The wizards lost something called the future. The wizards sleep in a dream without disasters and pains, and spend a peaceful life in the peaceful ideal place he created. And that spiritual Adam will become more indestructible because of the wizard's unwillingness to wake up. However, wizards must always move towards the future, even if the weaknesses of human nature make them stop. When they really cannot move forward, someone will try to save themselves. However, they are labeled as enemies, suppressed and eliminated by the giants, until more and more people wake up, and more people take the road to progress. Spiritual Adam is no longer indestructible, and giants also have weaknesses. Finally, Spiritual Adam fell. The giant known as the Pillar of Peace fell. And that man, he has never been a loser. Like everyone in the magic world, he keeps the possibilities of humanity in mind. He is the mythical sun chaser, flying to the sky and welcoming his final victory by falling. He rises high, just to come to the sun, a place no one has ever reached. He will melt and fall into the sea, and after that, countless people will pass his body and fly to a higher sky. No one remembers how the funeral ended, just as no one can separate the story from Dumbledore. The spiritual Adam fell, but the man did not fail. On the contrary, he achieved his goal. With the most sincere enthusiasm and the most silent death, he came to the sky he wanted. This funeral was not without value. After this funeral, people were no longer sad and heartbroken. They commemorated the greatest white wizard of this century and pursued the ideals of the deceased white wizard for a better peace in the wizarding world. 4. The spiritual Adam. In just one day, people walked out of their homes again. They were no longer afraid of Voldemort and the Death Eaters hidden in the darkness. They were fearless, just like the birds that spread their wings and flew high into the sky. In just 1 week, Wheeleyes Arms launched hundreds of new models of civilian and military arms. Orders from Wheeleyes Arms crossed the borders of the British wizarding world and flew to even farther away. Even the French wizarding world, where alchemists were born in large numbers, sent a large number of orders to Wheeleyes Arms. The Auras in the Aura office were armed with the latest alchemical firearms, and their magic level was rapidly improving under Scrimgeour's training again and again. At least, in the future, no one in the British magic world will mock those useless auras who can't even cast a complete armor charm. On the Quidditch field, more than 200 illusion arrays are operating efficiently. Except for classes, meals and curfew time, every member of the DA army is engaged in the training of illusion tests. They are immersed in the joy of improving their strength, and they have strengthened their determination to protect the magic world, for a better peace in the British magic world, and for the spiritual Adam. In this week, the fiery figure wrapped in blazing flames circled over the Hogwarts castle, emitting the sad and moving elegy. Phoenix Forks never entered the principal's office again. It flew sadly and sang sadly. The long-lasting Phoenix elegy made the listeners sad and the listeners cry. A week after Dumbledore's funeral, old Barty came to Hogwarts Castle again. He found Lin, Irina and Harry. He brought Dumbledore's will and Dumbledore's legacy to Lin, Irina and Harry. In an empty classroom, old Barty sat down with Lin and the other two face to face. He looked sad and took out a small roll of parchment from his pocket. Old Barty read softly, The Will of Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Chapter 709, Survive. Harry, this is the last lesson. I will leave an ounce of Fox's phoenix blood to Lin Rowe, hoping that he will believe that the phoenix can be reborn from the ashes, and can achieve rebirth from the ashes through the phoenix blood. Old Barty whispered, and handed a test tube to Lin. The test tube contained a golden red liquid, which was the blood of the phoenix fox. This golden red liquid seemed to be a burning flame. Not only was it not turbid at all, but it gave people a refreshing feeling. Lin frowned, and he took the test tube. Phoenix blood. Lin vaguely remembered that at the beginning of this school year, he had told Dumbledore that he had learned and mastered the blood fusion magic from his teacher, and at that time, Dumbledore seemed to be talking to himself. It seems, it can be used. This seemed to be what Dumbledore was talking to himself at the time. It can be used. What can be used? Exclamation mark. Could it be that Dumbledore at that time had anticipated this day? Could it be that Dumbledore at that time had already regarded his own death as part of the plan? Lin's face was very ugly. Why didn't Dumbledore discuss his own death with him beforehand? He was a trustworthy comrade, wasn't he? Why? Dumbledore didn't have to die. He had changed everything. Draco had turned back. Professor Snape no longer needed to be an undercover agent. 6 of the 7 Horcruxes had been destroyed, and even Voldemort was suppressed by them like a rat crossing the street, and dared not show up in the British wizarding world. So why did Dumbledore choose to die? Dumbledore, do you think you deserve to die? Exclamation mark. Lin didn't know why, but he felt a resentment in his heart. He could have let Dumbledore survive, but, Lin, Professor Dumbledore wants you to believe that the Phoenix can be reborn from the ashes. Perhaps he doesn't want you to be sad about his death. Seeing Lin's changing expression, Harry hesitated and persuaded. Harry's words made Lin En stunned for a moment, and his eyes also stayed on the words on the parchment. I hope he believes that the Phoenix can be reborn from the ashes. Lin En believed that Dumbledore's words were not written without purpose. So what was Dumbledore's intention? Did he hope that he could perform blood fusion magic and fuse Fox's phoenix blood? Or is there another meaning in these words? Lin En frowned, thinking about the possible implications of this line of words. At this time, old Barty continued to read. My magic notes are left to Irina Lowell. This is all my experience in studying and creating the water prison curse. I hope she can use it, and I hope she thinks my experience will help her. Old Barty handed a book that looked a little yellow to Irina. Irina carefully put it in her arms, fearing that she would damage it. Finally, old Barty looked at Harry, took a deep breath, and said, I leave Harry James Potter the golden snitch he caught during his first Quidditch match at Hogwarts, to remind him of the rewards of perseverance and skill. Old Barty took out a small golden ball the size of a walnut, its pair of silver wings flapping feebly. Harry solemnly took the golden snitch. Dumbledore left Lin with precious phoenix blood and Irina with a lifetime of experience in spells, but what he left for himself was only a golden snitch of commemorative significance. Harry believed that this golden snitch must not be as simple as it looked. Perhaps inside the golden snitch, there was a secret that only he could unlock. Exclamation mark. After all, the golden snitch has muscle memory. It will remember the first person who caught it, right? Just when Harry thought that the only thing Dumbledore left for him was the golden snitch, old Barty paused and continued. In addition, I left a memory bottle that stores a part of my memory to Harry James Potter. That was the last lesson I was going to give Harry, but failed to give him. Harry raised his head suddenly, and then he remembered that Dumbledore had said before that he would give him a last lesson and tell him something important, but he didn't expect that this last lesson would be taught in such an absurd way. Lin and Irina both looked at Harry with some reluctance. They knew what the last lesson Dumbledore said would be. He will tell Harry the cruel truth, that Harry is also a Horcrux. Barty the Elder put away the parchment in his hand. He glanced at Lin and solemnly announced, in addition, I, Barty the Elder, will represent the Ministry of Magic to take in Taboo 002, the Elder Wand, from the deceased former receiver, Albus Dumbledore. As he spoke, an exquisite and extremely powerful wand appeared in Barty the Elder's hand. He showed it to Lin, Irina and Harry, and then put it away. That wand was the Elder Wand. Seeing this, Harry suddenly became anxious, and he shouted loudly, no, you can't do this. This is Professor Dumbledore's wand, and the Ministry of Magic has no right to confiscate it. Irina held Harry, signaling Harry not to be impulsive. Lin's face was complicated. He didn't expect that Dumbledore had even calculated this step. Through his own death and the Ministry of Magic's regulations on the collection of taboo objects, the Elder Wand fell into the hands of the Ministry of Magic? Exclamation mark. It was a perfect method that would not arouse anyone's suspicion. Old Barty left, leaving only Lin, Irina and Harry in the empty classroom. Lin looked at Irina and said softly, I plan to make a blood fusion potion and cast blood fusion magic to fuse the blood talent of the Phoenix bloodline. Perhaps my strength can be improved before the war. Irina nodded gently and said, I will study the water prison spell left by Professor Dumbledore. Perhaps it can also have a special effect when combined with ice magic. After Lin and Irina left, Harry came to Professor McGonagall's office. The pin sieve that should have been placed in the principal's office was moved to Professor McGonagall's office at some point. After learning of Harry's purpose, Professor McGonagall took him to the pin sieve. Harry solemnly poured the silver white silk thread in the memory bottle into the pin sieve and buried his face in the pin sieve. As the world spun, Harry found himself in the principal's office, and Dumbledore's memory was smiling at him. I only heard Dumbledore in front of me whispering, Harry, when you come here, I may have died. I'm sorry, Harry, but I must tell you, live, Harry, this is the last lesson. Chapter 710. This is the greatest respect we can pay to those who are determined to die. Harry walked out of Professor McGonagall's office in a daze. He didn't remember how long he had been in the pin sieve, nor did he remember why he came. He only knew that he was Voldemort's last Horcrux, and was the threat that Lin and Irina had to resolve before killing Voldemort. On that dark and windy night, a fragment of Voldemort's soul attached to the only living person in the house, that is, him, and from that moment on, he became Voldemort's Horcrux. That's why he could contact Voldemort through dreams, could peek into Voldemort's perspective, and his own emotions would be bewitched by Voldemort. What was in his mind was not Voldemort's soul fragment, but Voldemort's Horcrux. To kill Voldemort, I must die. Why? Since Professor Dumbledore knew that I was going to die, why did he let me see all this, see the prosperity of this magical world? 2 tear marks appeared on Harry's face, and he started crying without knowing when. Harry understood that his fate was to become the last sacrifice before killing Voldemort, and become the stepping stone for the future peace of the magic world. Only his death could kill Voldemort and restore peace to the magic world. How cruel is this? Exclamation mark. Harry would rather die on that dark and windy night. At least, he knew nothing and saw nothing. However, he came to Hogwarts, saw the wonderful and gorgeous magic, met lovely partners and classmates, and witnessed the arrival of a new era of magic. And at this moment, he was going to die for everything he cherished. Was he willing? Of course not. But did he have any other way? No. Harry walked slowly outside the castle. He planned to take a look at the Black Lake, and take a look at the Black Lake in the evening. At the same time, Lin, who was supposed to be brewing blood fusion potion in the dormitory, and Irina, who was supposed to be studying magic notes, appeared at the Black Lake at the same time. As Lin En waved the wand in his hand, countless golden threads intertwined to form an illusion array that completely covered the Black Lake. The scene in the illusion array was distorted, and the alchemy detector was also integrated into the illusion array under Lin En's control. Lin En, is this really necessary? This is like rubbing salt on Harry's wounds. Isn't it a bit too cruel? Irina looked at the illusion array in front of her, and then looked at Harry, who had just stepped out of the castle gate, and was walking towards here, and couldn't help but say with reluctance. Lin En shook his head and said lightly, no, this is necessary. Harry needs to go through this battle before he can make up his mind. Lin En gently tapped his wand on his and Irina's heads, and the wonderful feeling of the cold liquid flowing through their bodies came. The disillusionment spell made their figures disappear on the spot. Harry walked in confusion. He didn't find anything unusual, and just stepped into the illusion array, and came to the Black Lake. This castle, this wonderful magic, this beautiful magical world, is really peaceful. Everyone likes it, and everyone is eager to stay here, but I have to leave. Harry muttered to himself as he looked at the Black Lake reflecting the setting sun. But at this moment, a childish voice came from beside him. So, sir, why are you leaving? Harry looked at the voice, and saw a child who looked only 11 or 12 years old. He recognized that it was his younger self, with messy hair, a bright lightning scar, a childish face, and a thin body. The bad news, that he was also a Horcrux, made Harry upset, so he didn't think about why his younger self appeared in front of him. He just followed his inner thoughts and whispered confusedly, I don't know. The younger self suddenly changed in front of him. The small body grew taller and taller at a speed visible to the naked eye, and became Harry's appearance, and continued to become more mature. Soon, the Harry in front of Harry became an adult, with a beard on his chin, and a bit of vicissitudes in his eyes. Who are you? Harry turned around and finally looked at the Harry in front of him. Harry smiled and said lightly, if you are willing to believe, I'm you. We are one. I show your heart. Harry was silent. He looked at the Harry in front of him, not knowing what to say. But at this moment, Harry continued to speak, and heard him say calmly, you know it, but the answer is meaningless. Harry was still silent. The answer is meaningless? What's the meaning of an answer with death as the destination? Exclamation mark. Harry sighed and said, admit it, you are tired. We are all tired, so we plan to leave here, you, me, and him. As Harry spoke, his figure suddenly changed, and the figure of the 11-year-old Harry suddenly appeared, but disappeared in an instant. You, your past, and your future. Harry seemed to be stating a fact. Harry suddenly calmed down. He looked at Harry and asked softly, when are we leaving here? Harry smiled and said, anytime. We will leave this beautiful dream with you forever. This is the greatest respect we pay to those who are determined to die. Harry was silent again. He looked at himself in front of him, and was silent for a long time. Until Harry spoke again. It is an extremely absurd approach, to take an unconventional approach, but it is not uncommon for you, because before you met those friends. Harry waved his hand, and the shadows of Irina, Ron, Hermione, Lin, Neville, and a group of young wizards from the DA army flashed quickly in front of Harry's eyes. Your own life has always been the first chip you throw out. It has always been like this. Of course, it is also the only chip you have as you are weak and powerless. You don't care whether Voldemort lives or dies, nor do you care whether the wizarding world can have peace in the future. You are just bound by the hot shackles of the world as a savior, and pushed to the center of the stage. And then, become the last victim of this great event, this event that sent Voldemort to death, and created the future peace of the wizarding world. Harry said so, looking into Harry's emerald eyes. Chapter 711 How many mistakes did you and I make to be born into this world? Exclamation mark. Harry turned his head away, not looking into the other person's eyes, but his gaze gradually became firm, and he whispered, I can do it, and it's perfect. Hearing this, Harry laughed again. He looked so relieved, but his tone was so firm. Of course you can. Your good luck will definitely help you at the right time. The golden snitch that Dumbledore left for you, and the old wand that was taken away by the Ministry of Magic. It's that simple, isn't it? Harry said with a chuckle. Harry looked over in confusion. He didn't know, what does this have to do with the golden snitch that was like a decoration, and the old wand that had been taken away by the Ministry of Magic a long time ago? Exclamation mark. This made Harry feel that the other person's words were incomprehensible and somewhat inconsistent. However, Harry did not mean to explain for him. He continued, in this way, your partner will be qualified to kill Voldemort, and you can also pull yourself out of the endless vortex, and get the relief you should have gotten long ago. In fact, this is not the first time. This should be the way you are best at and most eager for. This fast started with a death, and will end with a death. So, that prophecy, the prophecy from Trelawney, will choose you? Harry looked at Harry calmly and said so. Harry smiled self-deprecatingly and said, the prophecy chooses people born at the end of July, and it has nothing to do with specific people. The person who chooses me will always be Voldemort himself. Harry's expression became gentle, and the vague sense of alienation on him disappeared. He just asked softly, is it very hard? Harry looked at him strangely, laughed, and said, you suddenly become very considerate. Have you found your conscience? In the previous conversation, every word Harry said was poking at his heart, which made Harry feel a little annoyed, but Harry's sudden change made him a little surprised. Hearing this, Harry just chuckled and said, after all, I was born from yourself, so I know that it is as difficult as ascending to heaven to get back the chips I threw. Oh, I mean the Horcrux in your head. I can't stop what you want to do, and we can't change where you want to go. Harry said softly. The look in Harry's eyes became more determined, and he said lightly, it's hard to turn back the spilled water. All I can do is seize every opportunity to make myself win as many seconds as possible. Harry smiled, but there were some inexplicable complex emotions in his eyes. Harry just sneered and said, yes. It's a pity that it's impossible for people to make only right decisions in their lives. Even if good luck is always on your side, you will always win. You have never lost. But have you ever thought about why it's you? Why it has to be you? If the miracle of a lucky man is all based on the misfortunes of all the people he loves, or even more people, if every hope you bring never symbolizes the forgiveness and grace of Merlin or God, but meaningless death again and again, then how many mistakes have you and I made to be born into this world? Harry's tone suddenly became indifferent, and with every word that came out of his mouth, it seemed as if a picture flashed before Harry's eyes. That was what Harry should have experienced in the world line without the interference of Lin and Irina. Cedric's death. Sirius' death. Dumbledore, Moody, Lupin, Tonks, Fred, and the deaths of many of his companions. Harry's eyes gradually became moist, but the images that flashed before his eyes did not dispel his belief, but made him more determined to kill Voldemort at the cost of himself. Harry stared at the Harry in front of him, and he said slowly and firmly, maybe, when I reach that end, our confusion will be solved. Thank you. Seeing this, Harry smiled at him, and he said softly, heh, okay. Go ahead, my friend. I'll wait for you in the future. In the last moments, say goodbye to the past, and try to make yourself. As Harry spoke, his figure gradually became transparent, and before he finished speaking, he completely turned into nothingness. Harry stretched out his hand and slowly passed through the place where Harry was before he disappeared. He was lost in thought for a long time. The illusion was lifted without anyone noticing, disappearing into the air. The black lake reflecting the sunset became more real, with stars hanging in the night sky. Harry sat quietly by the lake, gazing into the distance, letting the breeze mess up his hair and the lake water wet his clothes. At the same time, the Ministry of Magic, the Department of Mysteries. Since the Battle of the Department of Mysteries, the defense of the Department of Mysteries has increased by more than 100 times. Auras, who had never interfered with the operation of the Department of Mysteries, also moved into the Department of Mysteries in large numbers to protect its safety. But tonight, all the auras originally stationed in the Department of Mysteries were sent out by Old Barty to various parts of the British wizarding world to search for Death Eaters on the grounds of insufficient manpower, even though there had been almost no traces of Death Eaters causing trouble in the past 6 months. The unspoken man who stayed in the Department of Mysteries was also entrusted to take Taboo 005, the death curtain stored in the Hall of Death, to the magic prison built half a month ago. After the magic prison was built, all the prisoners who were originally detained in the Ministry of Magic were transferred to the magic prison by the Auras. With the friendly sponsorship of Lin En, the protection measures of the magic prison are stronger than those of the former Azkaban prison. The entire magic prison, including its 10-mile radius, is equipped with various protection measures, and Lin En also arrived at the scene and personally refined a space blockade array covering the area. Under the suppression of the space blockade array, only the auras who are responsible for guarding the magic prison have the authority to perform space teleportation, provided by Lin En. Others, even the Demon King level wizards, have no way to use space teleportation in the magic prison and its vicinity. Not only that, Lin En also installed a magic barrier that Lin En had refined in the early years with the forbidden magic fire under the ground of the magic prison, which can suppress the magic power within the magic prison to prevent prisoners from rioting or outsiders from robbing the prison. Chapter 712. Your most loyal servant has brought you the Elder Wand. Unlike the indiscriminate suppression of magic power by the forbidden magic wand, the forbidden magic fire refined by Lin En has the function of distinguishing enemies from friends, and the magic sealing barrier combined with the power of the forbidden magic fire can also distinguish enemies from friends. Of course, the magic sealing barrier is an alchemical creation after all, and it cannot distinguish enemies from friends manually. It can only provide the authority to exempt the magic sealing power through the work cards carried by the auras and the temporary work cards of the Ministry of Magic. The magic sealing power of the magic sealing barrier cannot meet Lin En's requirements. If a prisoner bribes the auras and gets the work card, it will be difficult to deal with. Therefore, Lin En also taught the Ministry of Magic the method of making an alchemical array with the magic sealing power as the main attribute, to replace the magic contract with the penalty for breach of contract, which enables the Ministry of Magic to mass produce this magic contract. In this way, as long as the prisoners sign this magic contract, they will completely lose the ability to control magic power like Marita last year and become a squib. Magical creatures are selfish after all and cannot be trusted. So, Lin destroyed Azkaban prison and exiled the Dementors. But the power of forbidden magic is fair and ruthless. So, Lin chose to replace the Dementors with the power of forbidden magic, giving the prisoners an unbreakable cage. Compared with Azkaban prison, the new magic prison has a higher deterrent effect on wizards. Being imprisoned in Azkaban prison still has a chance to escape, and for animagus, entering Azkaban prison is like entering a no man's land. But if a wizard is imprisoned in a magic prison, then the feeling of losing magic power is really uncomfortable. As mentioned before, for most wizards, letting them lose the ability to control magic and become the lowest level of squibs is more uncomfortable than killing them. This kind of magic prison that uses the power of forbidden magic as a means to suppress prisoners was initially resisted by many people, but under the leadership of Voldemort, the promulgation of the new law successfully made the magic prison an undisputed new wizard prison. However, no matter how powerful the magic prison's power to banned magic can be, it is only for the wizards sentenced to imprisonment in the magic prison. After the Ministry of Magic added the death penalty, the magic prison lacked a necessary facility, that is, the facility for executing wizards. This is also the reason why old Barty chose to send auras and Unspoken to escort Taboo 005, the Death Veil, to the magic prison tonight. The Death Veil will become the execution tool for the magic prison to execute wizards. Of course, old Barty sent almost all the Unspoken and auras, not just to escort Taboo 005, the Death Veil. His real purpose was to deliberately create the illusion that the defense of the Department of Mysteries was weak, so as to lure the few remaining Death Eaters in the Ministry of Magic to steal Taboo 002, the Elder Wand. Old Barty was also an insider of the plan to deliberately let the Death Eaters steal Taboo 002, the Elder Wand, through the Ministry of Magic, and he was also the main executor of the plan. Soon, the Department of Mysteries became empty, and at the entrance of the Department of Mysteries, there was a wooden sign that read "Do not enter the Department of Mysteries without permission, and do not enter the death chamber containing Taboo 002. When seeing this wooden sign, Lin and Irina were actually against it. After all, after seeing such a wooden sign that was trying to cover up something, only a fool who was extremely stupid would really break in. But Lin and Irina miscalculated. The two Death Eaters were really stupid. If it weren't for old Barty keeping them and covering for them, they would have been arrested and executed a few months ago. When the two Death Eaters saw this sign and found that there were no auras stationed in the Department of Mysteries, they immediately ran into the death chamber of the Department of Mysteries happily and took the Elder Wand from a stand without any protective measures. They didn't even have any doubts about why they could pass through the Department of Mysteries, which should have been protected by layers of protection, so smoothly and get the Elder Wand so smoothly. Garrett, you leave the traces behind. I will take the Elder Wand back and present it to the Master, said a Death Eater. He held the Elder Wand and immediately apparated away after walking out of the range of the anti-apparition charm cast by the Department of Mysteries. On the other side, the Death Eater named Garrett was just about to wave his wand to clean up the traces they left behind. But the next moment, Expelliarmus. Expelliarmus. Dozens of disarming spells emitting enchanting red light flew out from different directions in an instant and hit the Death Eater named Garrett at the same time. In an instant, Garrett's wand was bombarded by dozens of disarming spells and exploded into pieces. Garrett, who was directly hit by dozens of disarming spells, had an enchanting red light all over his body. Then he flew high into the air and fell heavily to the ground, unconscious. Old Barty removed the disillusionment charm and said to the auras who also appeared around him, "Take Garrett to the interrogation room and give him the Veritaserum. If he has used the unforgivable curse to kill a wizard, send him directly to the magic prison and execute him with forbidden item 005. If he has not, sentence him to life imprisonment in the magic prison. Avery Manor." The Death Eater stumbled in from the entrance of the manor, but the next moment, dozens of killing curses emitting a faint green light hit his feet. "Stop." Yaxley walked out of the gate of Avery Castle slowly. He looked at the Death Eater and recognized his identity. "Maddock, why are you back?" Didn't the master ask you to hide in the Ministry of Magic? Madoc's face was full of excitement. He kept saying, I want to see the master. I want to see the master. I brought back a treasure from the Ministry of Magic, and I want to present it to the master. Hearing Madoc's words, Yaxley frowned. He pointed the wand in his hand at Madoc and whispered, reveal your true form. Stop the curse. Madoc still stood there without any change. Yaxley said lightly, to prove that you did not use the Polyjuice potion, you can choose to activate your dark mark, or wait for 2 hours. Madoc did not hesitate at all. He rolled up his sleeves, and put his wand against the dark mark. The next moment, his dark mark emitted a strange light, and Yaxley's dark mark also gave feedback. Yaxley finally nodded, and let Madoc walk into Avery Castle, and brought Madoc to Voldemort. Madoc immediately knelt in front of Voldemort, and took the Elder Wand out of his wizard robes, holding the Elder Wand in both hands, and raised it above his head, with a bit of fanaticism in his eyes. He said loudly, Master, your most loyal servant Madoc has brought you the forbidden object number 002, or the Deathly Hallows, the Elder Wand from the Department of Mysteries. Chapter 713 I want you to recruit Death Eaters from all over Europe. Hearing Madoc's words, even Voldemort couldn't sit still. He stood up, and the red light in his snake eyes became even more intense. Very good, you did a good job. Voldemort slowly leaned over, and took the old wand, which symbolized extremely powerful power, from Madoc, who was kneeling on the ground. Voldemort gently stroked the old wand in his hand. This wand has many names in the magic world, such as the Old Wand, the Wand of Destiny, the Deathly Hallows, and the forbidden object number 002. The corpse reappears. Voldemort shouted softly, and waved the old wand in his hand towards the ceiling. The dark mark bloomed on the ceiling of Avery Castle. The terrifying pressure made everyone's forehead stick tightly to the ground, unable to lift it up. The dark mark, which originally only symbolized the Death Eaters, actually had its own power at this moment, which was the pressure that fell on everyone. This pressure was like pressing a weight of dozens of kilograms on everyone's back, making them unable to move. Feeling the enormous power carried by the dark mark, Voldemort frowned, dissatisfied. He whispered, I can feel the power of this Elder Wand, but the power I get from the Elder Wand is not all of its power, or, I'm not its master yet. Hearing this, Madoc said in surprise, how is it possible? Master, this wand has always admired the strong, and you are its undisputed master. Yaxley shook his head and said, no, only the wizard who defeated the previous owner of the Elder Wand can become the new master of the Elder Wand. In other words, if the master wants to truly obtain the Elder Wand, he must defeat the original owner of the Elder Wand. Madoc raised his eyebrows and said, impossible. Dumbledore is dead, isn't he? No one can defeat a dead person. Voldemort slowly raised his head, but he was reciting a name, Severus Snape. Madoc didn't understand what Voldemort meant, but Yaxley suddenly realized. The news from Hogwarts Castle was that Severus Snape killed Dumbledore, and the Elder Wand did not recognize Voldemort as its master, so the only answer was obvious. That is, Severus Snape, who killed Dumbledore, became the new owner of the Elder Wand. Yaxley frowned and said, Snape's whereabouts are unknown, and the dark mark can't contact him, as if his coordinates were erased by something. The only way to completely hide a person, except for the ancient magic of Hogwarts Castle, is the Fidelius charm, and Snape, who killed Dumbledore, can't stay in Hogwarts Castle. Yaxley said thoughtfully. Voldemort felt the huge power of the Elder Wand in his hand, but he was unwilling to give it all to himself. He gritted his teeth and said, let some Death Eaters find it. We must find Severus Snape. He is the key to my real Elder Wand. Bring him to me, and I will kill him with my own hands. Now Snape is obviously isolated, and helpless after killing Dumbledore, and escaping from Hogwarts Castle. Snape's interpersonal relationships are not good, and the people he knows are either loyal to Dumbledore or Death Eaters. Now, Snape, who killed Dumbledore and betrayed Voldemort, can't get good from both sides. So, who else will cast the Fidelius charm for him? Who else is willing to risk his life to keep it secret for him? Voldemort didn't think that Snape would use the Fidelius charm to hide himself, or he didn't want to believe it, because that would mean that he would never be recognized by the Elder Wand, unless Snape died of old age, and had never been defeated by others before. Yaxley nodded and said, "Yes, Master, I will order your Death Eaters to capture Snape and present him to you." Voldemort said calmly. "Also, call McNeil in." Yaxley dragged Maddox out together, and soon McNeil came in apprehensively. Voldemort's scarlet snake eyes stared at McNeil, and he asked, "McNeil, have you made any progress in your intelligence network in the German magic world? Have you found the Malfoy family?" Hearing Voldemort's question, McNeil's face turned pale. He knelt on the ground, lowered his head and said, "Please forgive me, Master. After the Malfoy family arrived in the German magic world, they immediately disappeared without a trace, as if they had never appeared in the German magic world. My intelligence network found nothing." Voldemort was not surprised. Judging from the fact that Draco Malfoy was still studying in Hogwarts Castle, the Malfoy family had probably been taken away and protected by that damned Droll. The Malfoy family was protected by the demon level wizard, so it was not difficult to accept that McNeil had gained nothing in the German magic world. Voldemort waved his hand, motioning McNeil to stand up, and then said, "Let's put the Malfoy family's affairs aside for now. After we capture Hogwarts Castle in 3 months and capture Draco Malfoy, I don't believe Lucius Malfoy will still sit still. I called you here for another matter. The situation in the British magic world is extremely unfavorable to the Death Eaters, which has also seriously hindered our plan to develop more Death Eaters. Therefore, I want you to develop more Death Eaters from the French magic world, the German magic world, and the magic world of other European countries. I need more like-minded people. I want to expand my power, McNeil. Before we launch a general attack on Hogwarts Castle, McNeil, I want you to develop at least 3,000 Death Eaters in Europe." Voldemort looked into McNeil's eyes and said so. Hearing Voldemort's mission, McNeil was sweating profusely on the spot. In the magic world of other European countries, especially in the French magic world, where alchemy is prevalent, there are few foolish wizards who believe in the Death Eaters' pure-blood supremacy. Naturally, few people are willing to join the Death Eaters and surrender to Voldemort. Even in the British magic world, the birthplace of the Death Eaters, those who have joined the Death Eaters are all dark wizards and lunatics who enjoy killing and torturing others, and there are no pure-blood elites who come for the pure-blood supremacy. This makes it difficult for McNeil to develop Death Eaters from the magic world of other countries, reaching the level of hell. "Yes, my master." With no other choice, McNeil prostrated himself on the ground and said respectfully to Voldemort. Chapter 714, a variation of the water prison curse, an ice prison curse combined with ice magic. Hogwarts Castle. After using the illusion array to strengthen Harry's faith, Lin En returned to the Slytherin dormitory. In the area, separated by the alchemical barrier, the alchemical equipment that was originally placed had disappeared. Instead, there were equipment for brewing potions, including potion tables and crucibles. Lin En had a premonition that after the news of Dumbledore's murder spread, Hogwarts was probably not far from the arrival of the final battle. Therefore, he must improve his strength as much as possible in the shortest time, and casting blood fusion magic to fuse Fawkes' Phoenix bloodline is the best choice. Lin En added the materials to the crucible one by one, and a wisp of red flame also ignited out of thin air under the crucible. The brewing period of blood fusion potion is 2 weeks, and during this period, Irina was not idle. After packing her things, she almost moved into the room of requirement. The DA's gathering place had long been changed to the Quidditch field, which allowed Irina to hide in the room of requirement for more than 2 weeks without being disturbed by anyone. The room of requirement was transformed into an empty training ground, and Irina was in the center of the ground. From the magic notes left to her by Dumbledore, Irina mastered the water prison spell. After a day of practice, her mastery of the water prison spell also improved from the initial normal release to being able to cast silently and without a wand, until she could cast silently and without a wand. "I need some training dummies." As Irina finished speaking, dozens of training dummies appeared not far from her. Irina raised her left hand slightly, and as she moved her mind, endless water flow emerged out of thin air, but the water flow was not as gentle as the water flow summoned by the spring spell, but it was like a thorn in the flesh, entwining the dozens of training dummies. The water flow split into hundreds of rope-like streams in the air, entangled the training dummies from various tricky angles, and like a giant python, it shrank towards the middle, trying to strangle the training dummies. These should have been gentle water flows, but under Irina's control, they were like snakes strangling their prey. Under the continuous contraction of the water flow, dozens of training dummies made crisp click sounds one after another. Those training dummies seemed to be overwhelmed. Many precision parts broke under the strangulation of the water flow, and these training dummies also completely fell apart and scattered all over the ground. The water prison spell created by Dumbledore was supposed to be a control spell used to bind the enemy, but it did not have such a strong offensiveness. This was related to Dumbledore's kindness and unwillingness to kill others. But under Irina's improvement, the water prison spell had a good killing power. Even the training dummies made of wood and even steel were shattered all over the ground under the strangulation of the water prison spell, not to mention the human body, which was already extremely fragile! However, Irina seemed to be a little dissatisfied with the lethality of the improved water prison curse. Her beautiful eyebrows slightly frowned, and she whispered, "The power is still a little lacking. How can we continue to improve it?" Looking at the training dummies that were refreshed again and again by the room of requirement, and then shattered again and again under the strangulation of the water prison curse she released, Irina seemed to have a new inspiration. Maybe I'm going in the wrong direction. Water may not only be able to strangle the enemy like a python. Water is the softest thing, but also the hardest thing. Irina thought of something, and she waved the magic wand in her hand again. Under Irina's control, the water flow that was originally like a rope suddenly became hard, turning into sharp sword blades, and shot towards the training dummies not far away. Irina thought of Astoria's blood curse. The carrier of Astoria's blood curse is blood, and blood is also a kind of liquid. The blood blade of the blood curse can be so indestructible that it can even threaten the life of a demon level wizard. So why can't the water flow she summoned by casting the water prison spell be so indestructible? Compared with the blood blade of the blood curse, her water flow can't embody the blood talent. Soon, Irina improved the second variant of the water prison spell, which was based on Astoria's ancient magic blood curse, the water prison curse. The water flow that was supposed to form the water prison turned into sharp water blades, stabbing at the training dummy from all directions. In an instant, dozens of sharp water blades pierced the body of the training dummy, passing through the ribs of the training dummy, passing through the bottom of the training dummy's scapula, and locking it tightly. It was different from the water prison spell that originally wrapped the target inside and bound the target with a very tough water prison. The variant of the water prison curse that Irina improved chose to directly pierce the target's body, and the target was firmly locked in place through the water blades that pierced the target's body. The ribs of the training dummy were pierced by 12 water blades, and the scapula was locked by 2 water blades. Its hands, arms, legs, and feet were all pierced by several water blades and nailed to the ground. Well, this is a water prison curse. No, it should be said that the water prison curse has the power it should have. Looking at the training dummy that was completely nailed to the ground by dozens of water blades and could not move, Irina finally nodded with satisfaction. If there were other little wizards in the room of requirement at this time and saw this scene, the little wizard would probably sigh. Too cruel. Who would have thought that the little witch who looked so well behaved and cute would be so cruel when releasing magic? Irina waved her wand, dispelling the water prison curse that had pierced the training dummy with thousands of holes, and whispered, "Let's stop the research on the water prison curse for now. Then, it's time to combine the water prison curse with my ice magic." In the past 10 days, Irina has been trying to combine the water prison curse with ice magic. Irina's initial idea was to release the water prison curse first to nail the target to the spot, and then use ice magic to freeze the water blade of the water prison curse into ice, so that it has the lethality of ice. However, since ice magic is used to freeze the water blade into ice, why not use ice blade instead of water blade from the beginning? After all, the hardness of the ice blade itself is higher than that of the water blade. What the water blade can do, the ice blade can also do, and the flexibility of the water flow cannot be fully reflected in the variant of the water prison curse. After successfully replacing the water blades of the water prison curse with the ice blades of ice magic, Irina developed a new type of ice magic, the ice prison curse. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 715, Phoenix Blood Essence, a ritual of blood fusion magic. While Irina was studying Dumbledore's magic notes and inventing new ice magic, Len's blood fusion potion had also reached the final moment. The blood fusion potion in the crucible had become as transparent as water, but when Lin used his wand to stir the potion in the crucible, the potion became viscous. Lin took out Fox's Phoenix Blood Essence and stared at the golden red blood in the test tube. According to the steps of brewing blood fusion potion, he needed to drip 3 to 5 drops of Phoenix Blood Essence in the test tube into the crucible. The specific amount of Phoenix Blood Essence dripped into the crucible is also related to the blood concentration of the blood fusion potion and the wizard's own tolerance. Even if only 3 drops of Phoenix Blood Essence are dripped, the brewed blood fusion potion must be at least a quasi-demon king level wizard to be sure to take it. Lin En is a demon king level wizard, and he is a relatively powerful one among demon king level wizards. Not only that, he also has a very high affinity for fire. With his realm and bloodline talent, he must be able to fuse more Phoenix Blood Essence. Thinking of this, Lin En poured 5 drops of Phoenix Blood Essence from the test tube into the crucible. This is also the upper limit of the concentration of Phoenix blood that can be neutralized by the bloodline fusion potion. As the Phoenix Blood Essence fell into the crucible, the entire crucible seemed to turn into a red flame. The golden red liquid with some ripples was like the most wonderful drink, shaking in the crucible. Lin En did not make any movements, but the temperature in the crucible continued to rise. Lin En did not expect that the power of this Phoenix Blood Essence was so overbearing. He did not hesitate and continued the last step of brewing the bloodline fusion potion. He turned on the alcohol lamp under the crucible to the maximum, inserted the magic wand into the crucible, stirred it 3.5 times clockwise, and then stirred it twice counterclockwise. The golden red liquid in the crucible suddenly boiled, and countless small bubbles floated from the liquid and exploded on the surface of the liquid. After nearly half an hour, Lin En turned off the alcohol lamp, and the potion in the crucible also turned into red liquid, which looked as crystal clear as a pure and beautiful ruby. Seeing this scene, Lin En nodded secretly. He waved the magic wand in his hand lightly, and countless fine golden threads surrounded the crucible and kept interweaving. Alchemy arrays condensed above the blood fusion potion, combined together according to fixed positions, and turned into a perfect blood fusion array. Under Lin En's precise control, this blood fusion array slowly fell into the crucible. At the moment when the blood fusion array and the blood fusion potion merged, violent magic fluctuations spread, and Lin En seemed to hear the cry of a phoenix. But the next moment, the surging magic power and the faint phoenix cry disappeared, as if what Lin En had just felt was all an illusion. The huge power quickly gathered and condensed into the ruby-like blood fusion potion. Then, the blood fusion potion in the crucible began to shrink on its own, as if the excess water was evaporated. The potion that was originally full of potion was reduced to a small bottle. This small bottle of liquid was the finished blood fusion potion. Lin En waved his wand and used the levitation spell to suspend a mouthful of potion in the crucible. He put it into his mouth without hesitation. The moment he took the blood fusion potion, Lin En felt a huge and extremely powerful force bursting out in his body. This force was very violent and carried a high temperature that was enough to burn a human body into ashes in an instant. If Lin En was not a Demon King level wizard, and he did not have an affinity for high temperatures and burning flames, I'm afraid that his body would be burned by the bursting power and turned into ashes the moment he took the blood fusion potion. Damn it, how could the power of this blood fusion potion be so violent? Exclamation mark. Lin En gritted his teeth and endured. This blood fusion potion made from 5 drops of Phoenix Essence blood continuously released huge power in his body, which made his body reach its limit in an instant. Even because his body could not bear such a huge force, his body was visibly expanded by the huge and violent force, as if it was edema. enduring the severe pain from all over his body that was comparable to the heart-piercing curse. Lin En pointed the magic wand at his heart and quickly chanted the blood fusion spell. While taking the blood fusion potion, he chanted the blood fusion spell continuously until the ritual of blood fusion magic was completely completed. This was what Lin En had to do. As Lin En chanted the blood fusion spell, the pain that was like thousands of ants gnawing at his heart seemed to have weakened a little. It was the blood fusion spell that helped his body adapt to the phoenix blood faster and allowed the wizard blood in his body to merge with the phoenix blood faster. The blazing flames ignited from Lin's body, and in an instant, they wrapped Lin's body, turning Lin into a fireman. Lin did not expect that the ritual of blood fusion magic would be so thrilling, which made him somewhat unprepared for the burning of the flames. The flames carried an extremely high temperature, breaking the alchemical barrier in the dormitory in an instant, and the high temperature also ignited the bed, quilt, carpet, and even the entire dormitory. Seeing this scene, Draco, Lin's roommate, was stunned on the spot. He ran out of the Slytherin dormitory screaming in fear and went to Professor McGonagall and Irina for help. Soon, Professor McGonagall and Irina, led by Draco, came to the outside of Lin's dormitory. When Irina flipped her hands, the whole dormitory turned into an ice cellar, and all the flames that tried to spread were completely isolated by the ice. After stopping the fire in the Slytherin dormitory, Irina looked curiously at where Lin En was. As a little lion of Gryffindor, she had never been to the Slytherin common room. This time, Professor McGonagall specially allowed her to come in to help put out the fire. After all, in Professor McGonagall's view, the fire released by a demon-level wizard can only be extinguished by another demon-level wizard. In the Slytherin dormitory, although Lin En put all his mind into the blood fusion magic, it did not mean that he could not sense everything that happened in the outside world. After discovering that the Slytherin dormitory was burned down by himself and alarmed Professor McGonagall and Irina, Lin En could only apologize in his heart. Chapter 716, The Fire of Nirvana, The Healing Effect of Flame Apparition and Phoenix Tears. The magic level that was almost invincible in the British magic world did make Lin En a little arrogant, which made him neglect the possible dangers of blood fusion magic itself. Fortunately, this blazing flame was just the residual power of Lin En's blood talent that was unconsciously released during the process of fusing the phoenix blood. The fire that burned the Slytherin dormitory was also an ordinary flame that ignited by the flammable materials in the dormitory after the indoor temperature reached the ignition point, not a magical flame. If Draco had carefully distinguished, he could even use the King Shuruken spell to extinguish the flame in the dormitory. Of course, this was not Draco's fault. After all, no wizard would think that it was just an ordinary flame after seeing a demon-level wizard who was good at fire magic release a flame. Just like no one would think that the pistol pulled out from the waist of a serial killer who shot and killed dozens of people was just a plastic toy pistol. After Draco, Irina and Professor McGonagall discovered that Lin En was performing the blood fusion magic ritual, the three of them had been guarding the dormitory that had turned into an ice cellar, watching Lin En, who was bathed in flames, with concern, and protecting Lin En. Lin En's blood fusion magic lasted for a day and a night, and it was finally completed. The flames bathing around Lin En licked his skin affectionately, and as Lin En moved his mind, he was retracted into his body. There seemed to be a weak flame in his dark red eyes, like a flame rekindled in the ashes. Thank you, Draco, Irina, and Professor McGonagall. Lin En felt his extremely good physical condition, and said to the three people at the door with a smile. Seeing that Lin En's blood fusion magic was successful, Draco finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although Irina didn't say anything, a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Only Professor McGonagall came over with a serious face. She said lightly, "Mr. Owl, I think you should give a reasonable explanation for setting fire to the Slytherin dormitory." Hearing Professor McGonagall's words, Lin En scratched his head and smiled awkwardly. He no longer looked like a demon-level wizard. Instead, he looked like, oh no, just a student who made a mistake. Lin En briefly told Professor McGonagall about how he got the phoenix blood from Dumbledore and used blood fusion magic to fuse the phoenix's blood talent. Blood fusion magic? Professor McGonagall frowned. She seemed to have heard of this kind of magic. If Albus left it to you, He must be aware of it and acquiesce to what you are going to do. Professor McGonagall was relieved. After casting the restoration spell and repairing the burned Slytherin dormitory, she left. After watching Professor McGonagall leave, Lin was extremely thankful that it was just an ordinary fire, not a fiend fire, that burned down the Slytherin dormitory. Otherwise, the Slytherin dormitory would be completely destroyed. Lin told Draco to wait for her in the dormitory, and then she and Irina came to the room of requirement. Irina showed Lin the new ice magic she invented, the ice prison curse, and then she looked at Lin with curiosity and asked, "Lin, can I know which blood talents of the Phoenix you have merged?" Hearing Irina's question, Lin couldn't help but smile widely. Obviously, after he merged with Fox's Phoenix bloodline, the gains he got from it far exceeded his imagination. Seeing Lin En grinning from ear to ear, Irina became even more curious. She asked, "Did you get the blood talent of the Phoenix, to be reborn from the ashes? After death, can you be reborn from the ashes like a phoenix and directly resurrect?" Hearing this, Lin En shook his head and said with a smile, "That's impossible. This kind of blood talent of rebirth from the ashes and immortality cannot be inherited by wizards." After learning that Lin En did not get the talent of rebirth from the ashes, Irina did not feel disappointed. After all, the blood talent of rebirth from the ashes and immortality is almost in existence at the level of rules. The number of phoenixes that have appeared in the entire magic world can be counted on one hand. Even if the phoenix has mastered such an ability, it will not affect the balance of the entire world. But wizards can't do that. Just like the world rules cut off the path of alchemists to become gods, the path for wizards to obtain this kind of blood talent of rebirth from the ashes and immortality has long been cut off by the invisible world rules. Oh, Lin En, don't keep me in suspense. Irina's curiosity was completely aroused by Lin En. She hugged Lin En's arm and acted like a spoiled child. Lin En smiled slightly, and a ball of golden red flames ignited from under him. In an instant, his figure was completely wrapped in the golden red flames. The next moment, Irina clearly did not sense any fluctuations in the power of space, but Lin En's figure disappeared from the spot and appeared at the place where the flames ignited as the flames ignited dozens of meters away. Looking at Irina's amazing eyes, Lin En introduced with a smile, "This is the bloodline talent of the Phoenix bloodline that I inherited, the Flame Phantom Shift. Yes, I control one more kind of flame. That is the Phoenix Flame of the Phoenix. Of course, I prefer to call it the Nirvana Fire among the 10 great flames in the online articles of my previous life," Lin En said with a smile. "Nirvana Fire?" Irina raised her eyebrows. The characteristic of the Nirvana Fire among the 10 great flames of the prehistoric world is not the flame phantom shifting. Among the magic flames that Lin En mastered, the one that he named after the 10 great flames of the prehistoric world in the online article, in addition to the Nirvana Fire in front of him, is the Ziwi Heavenly Fire. Even though Lin En's Ziwi Heavenly Fire only borrowed this name, and was not one of the 10 great flames of the prehistoric world, the Ziwi Heavenly Fire really came from the starry sky, and was transformed by the power of the stars. This, to a certain extent, reflects the characteristics of the Ziwi Heavenly Fire. From Irina's understanding of Lin En, if the ability of this Phoenix Flame was only the Flame Phantom Shifting, then Lin En would rather call it the Phoenix Fire or Phoenix Flame than name it the Nirvana Fire, one of the 10 great flames of the prehistoric world. Hearing this, Lin En laughed, and he laughed very happily. He just continued, "Of course, the Nirvana Fire, one of the 10 great flames of the prehistoric world, is a very sacred flame with powerful vitality. It is not aggressive, and its fiery nature is not strong. It is a holy fire. So, the Nirvana Fire, one of the 10 great flames of the prehistoric world, also known as the Fire of Life, is the original flame of the Phoenix clan and the prehistoric myths and legends, and its power is healing. My Nirvana Fire has the effect of Phoenix Tears, which can heal injuries and purify evil," Lin En said softly. Chapter 717 Harry, thank you. Irina's eyes widened. She wondered if she had heard it wrong. Huh? A flame that heals injuries and purifies evil? Lin En smiled and nodded. He gently wiped his left arm with his right hand, and a blood stain appeared on his arm. Then, with Lin En's mind moving, a ball of golden red flame suddenly ignited and wrapped Lin En's injured arm. The gentle golden red flame licked his arm. Then, under Irina's incredible gaze, the injury on Lin En's left arm was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. This Nirvana fire can really heal injuries. But soon, Irina raised a new question. She asked, but other people don't have your blood talent of ignoring fire and burning. Maybe the healing effect of your Nirvana fire is only useful to you? Lin En explained. Just like when Fox took us to perform the fire apparition, we couldn't feel the high temperature of the flame. When my Nirvana fire uses its healing ability, it will not burn its own people. Irina was even more surprised. In order to verify Lin En's statement, she personally cut a cut on her wrist. She motioned to Lin En to show her again. Don't hurt yourself like this. I will feel bad. Lin En smiled dotingly. He walked over and gently stroked Irina's wound. The golden red flame ignited again and gently wrapped Irina's injured wrist. Irina only felt that her wrist wrapped in the flame was warm and comfortable, just like she was lying comfortably by the fireplace in the winter cottage, or like she was lying in the warm embrace of her mother. Under her gaze, the wound on her wrist healed as if it had never existed. After verifying the healing power of the Nirvana fire, Irina said in surprise, "It really works. Is the healing effect of the Nirvana fire really equivalent to the Phoenix's tears?" Lin En's smile became even bigger, and he said proudly, "Of course. Even if Harry is pierced by the basilisk's fangs, my Nirvana fire can bring him back to life." "Harry, thank you." Irina also smiled, and she said, "With your Nirvana fire, which is as effective as Phoenix tears, we can reduce a lot of casualties in the battle." Lin smiled and nodded, then asked, "How is Harry?" Irina thought for a moment and said, "I have been hiding in the room of requirement these days, but I asked Hermione to tell me about Harry's situation. He seems to have prepared everything, and is trying to find out Voldemort's whereabouts through the DA army. So." Lin nodded thoughtfully and said, "I will secretly tell Harry the coordinates of the forest where I was when I kidnapped Nagini. It has been so long since Neville killed Nagini and destroyed Voldemort's penultimate Horcrux. Even if Voldemort is stupid, he knows that his Horcrux Nagini is probably in danger, but he will definitely not give up his last hope, and will definitely send Death Eaters to search in the forest where Nagini was last seen when she was kidnapped. In this way, when Harry gets the coordinates of the forest and goes to the forest, he will be discovered by the Death Eaters who are searching for Nagini and brought to Voldemort. And Lin can also use the locator left on Harry in advance to find the coordinates of Avery Manor. This is a good plan to kill two birds with one stone. Then you can implement it tomorrow. Tomorrow is the day of the DA Army Assembly," Irina said softly. "The more than 200 illusion arrays are stationed in the Quidditch field, so that the members of the DA Army do not have to wait until the assembly to train, but can go to the Quidditch field for training every day. However, the DA Army's assembly was not cancelled because of this, but the role of the DA Army's assembly has also changed from the initial training to the effect of boosting morale, just like the Great Assembly of Lin and Irina School in their previous life." The next day, Quidditch field. At the DA Army's assembly, Lin encouraged everyone to improve their magic level and make themselves stronger as much as possible before the war, and deliberately inadvertently said the coordinates of the forest. According to the intelligence from the Ministry of Magic, there are traces of a large number of Death Eaters in the Airy Forest. It can be inferred that Voldemort has gathered enough Death Eaters so that he no longer needs to hide his strength. "We are not far from the war." Lin said so. Hearing Lin's words, Harry, who was sitting on the mat, frowned. There are traces of a large number of Death Eaters in the Airy Forest, but the Airy Forest is just a deserted primeval forest, and no other wizards live there. Even if those Death Eaters want to burn, kill and loot, they shouldn't run to the Airy Forest! Exclamation mark. Unless the base of those Death Eaters, or the location of Voldemort, is in the Airy Forest. Harry felt that he had grasped the key to the problem. If Voldemort is in the Airy Forest, then if he wants to be the last victim and let Voldemort destroy the Horcrux in his head with his own hands, going to the Airy Forest to try his luck is the best choice. Thinking of this, Harry secretly clenched his fists. After getting the coordinates of the Airy Forest, Harry no longer had any thoughts to listen to Lin's next speech, which made him not even know when the DA Army's rally would end. When the little wizards around him had dispersed, Harry was still sitting there in deep thought. At this moment, Lin, who had finished his speech, came over. He gently patted Harry on the back of his head and said with a smile, "What are you thinking about? Keep going, Harry. Everyone is optimistic about you." Harry stood up and nodded to Lin with a complicated look. Lin, Irina, Ron, Hermione, and his friends were also optimistic about him, but they didn't know that the Harry Potter they had always been optimistic about was about to die alone. When they heard the news of his death, would they be sad? Probably, maybe. Harry watched Lin leave. Harry didn't realize that on the back of his head where Lin had just patted him, a small metal disc with a diameter of less than 1 millimeter had appeared, which was close to the back of his head. It was an all-chemical artifact used for positioning. Harry stood up and walked out of the Quidditch field, but he did not return to Hogwarts Castle. He quietly stared at the towering castle standing in the distance until it was completely dark. He turned around and used a spell to speed up his walking speed until he left the territory of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He took out the key to the anywhere door that Irina gave him from his pocket, and the next moment, his figure disappeared with a flash of white light. Chapter 718 In War, any kindness is the greatest cruelty to oneself. Airy Forest. Harry suddenly appeared here, and the anywhere door key in his hand completely lost its magic power as he activated and used it, turning it into an ordinary spoon. This also means that Harry's use of the anywhere door key to come to Airy Forest is a one-way ticket, and there is no possibility of turning back. Harry threw away the spoon that had lost its magic power, clenched the wand in his hand, took a deep breath, and walked towards the endless forest in front of him. Airy Forest is an ordinary primeval forest, without any magical plants or any traces of wizards. Harry felt as if he had returned to the muggle world, and the only thing he could see that could be linked to magic was the wand in his hand. As time went by, Harry went deeper and deeper into Airy Forest, but his doubts in his heart, increased. According to Lin, Airy Forest has a lot of traces of Death Eater's activities, but even though this primeval forest is very large, he should always see some remnants of magic, right? Exclamation mark. However, Harry couldn't even see the footprints left by others. The forest was so quiet that even the chirping of birds in the distance seemed vague. Could it be that Lin's speech at the rally was just alarmist? Exclamation mark. Could it be that there was no trace of Death Eater's activities here, and Voldemort and the Death Eater's base was not here at all? Exclamation mark. That's right, with Voldemort's pride in the Death Eater's wealth, how could they be willing to live in this uninhabited primeval forest? Exclamation mark. Those Death Eaters would probably choose a manor of a pure-blood family and use that manor as their base. Just when Harry was wondering if Lin was deceiving himself, a faint conversation sounded, which cheered Harry up. "I'm really convinced the master has nothing better to do than to send us out to look for that snake. The Airy Forest is so big, let alone a snake, even if it's a fire dragon, we may not be able to find it. Shh, be careful. Because the big snake is missing, the master has become more and more moody recently. I heard that several brothers were hurt by the master when they mentioned the snake, and they were killed on the spot by the master with a killing curse. Damn it, is our choice correct? Why do I feel that the one I'm following is not a king who can lead us to victory, but a madman?" Shut up. If the master or McNeil and the others hear what you said, even Merlin can't save you. Trouble comes from the mouth. Listening to the conversation between the two Death Eaters coming closer and closer, Harry finally breathed a sigh of relief. He leaned forward and pointed the wand in his hand at one of the Death Eaters. "Disarm you." With a scream, the red light as thick as an adult's arm knocked the Death Eater flying, and the wand in his hand completely exploded, blasting into pieces all over the sky. The Death Eater's body hit a thick tree trunk several meters away, and then slid down like a puddle of mud. Judging from the strange bending of his torso when it hit the tree trunk, the Death Eater's spine was probably completely broken. The other Death Eater was stunned. He had never seen such a powerful disarming spell. Avada Kedavra. No matter how stupid the remaining Death Eater was, he knew that the wizard who attacked them was an enemy, not a friend. Whether the other party was an aura sent to arrest them, or a senior Death Eater who overheard their conversation and planned to clean up their house, he had to kill him to save his life. Otherwise, the latter is needless to say. As for the former, with a lot of muggle blood on his hands, if he is caught by the auras, then his fate is death anyway. A faint green light broke through the air and headed straight for Harry's face. But how could Harry, who had gone through countless illusion tests, be hit by this killing curse that was coming straight at him? Exclamation mark. Harry's feet did not move, his body tilted slightly to the right, and the faint green light beam lingering with the breath of death flew past his left ear. Petrification. Harry chanted the spell again, and a grey-white light broke through the air. Seeing this, the Death Eater was extremely anxious, and he quickly retreated to the back. However, his thoughts had long been guessed by Harry. The full body binding spell was originally heading towards the Death Eater's retreat route. The grey-white light hit the back of the Death Eater, and the Death Eater's legs were immediately stuck together, as if they were glued together, and his arms were also stuck to his side. His body was fixed in place, and fell straight down. Harry slowly walked towards the two knocked down Death Eaters. When he passed the first Death Eater, he did not look at him, but raised his hand and cast a silent shattering curse. The shattering curse hit the Death Eater's head directly, exploding it like a bursting watermelon, and scarlet blood splashed all over the ground, and some of it splashed on Harry's wizard robes and his clean face. Harry had killed people with magic only a few times, and in previous battles, most of the magic he cast was aimed at making the opponent lose his fighting power, just like the disarming curse and full body binding curse he had released before. But this time, Harry was so indifferent, as if he killed a person without any emotion. Harry's heart was very calm. He did not feel uneasy, hesitant, or any other emotions, because he killed a Death Eater. He just felt that he had done something he should do. He slowly came to the second Death Eater, who was controlled by the full body binding curse. He pressed his wand hard against the other's forehead, almost piercing into his flesh and blood. Legitimate psychic. Harry's light voice came, but it made the Death Eater's eyes widen. Soon, Harry learned all the information about Avery Manor and the way to enter Avery Manor. "Thank you, Mr. Death Eater." Tear into pieces. Harry's mouth corners rose slightly. He stood up and lightly threw out a cutting curse, cutting off the Death Eater's head. Harry understood that what he was about to face was no longer a small fight in the college, nor the grudges between classmates, but a war, a thorough war, that determined the future direction of the magic world. In war, all kindness is the greatest cruelty to oneself. Chapter 719. I can only send you on your way, Mr. Death Eater. According to the memory of going to Avery Manor that he had searched out from the Death Eater's mind, Harry walked forward with his wand. Harry no longer took detours, but arrived outside Avery Manor at the fastest speed. He looked at the seemingly empty space in the distance. He knew that Avery Manor was in this space, but the protective magic made him unable to see anything. Just as Harry walked out from behind a big tree and was about to lift the barrier of protective magic and enter Avery Manor, 5 more Death Eaters with bitter faces suddenly appeared from the air. That was because they left the area covered by the protective magic of Avery Manor, so they were seen by Harry. Judging from the expressions of these 5 Death Eaters, they were probably sent by Voldemort to find the missing snake Nagini, but they didn't know that the Horcrux snake they were searching for had long been destroyed by Neville, the future leader of their DA army. Harry laughed in his heart, but he was not slow at all. Before the Death Eaters saw Harry, Harry quickly shook his wrist holding the wand, and 5 disarming curses broke through the air almost instantly. The Death Eaters were already listless, and for a moment they were unable to defend against this sudden attack. One of the Death Eaters was immediately knocked out by a disarming curse, and his wand also flew out of his hand. Although the other 4 Death Eaters were unable to cast a spell to defend in time, they subconsciously dodged to the side and narrowly avoided the red beams that attacked them. Damn, what are those gatekeepers doing? The enemy has already touched the door. Cruciatus. A Death Eater cursed loudly, and when he raised his hand, a Cruciatus curse attacked Harry. Harry dodged the Cruciatus curse of the Death Eater sideways, and raised his hand to cast an explosive curse at the Death Eater who was hit by his disarming curse. The flames burst out, devouring the life of the Death Eater who had lost his wand, and the airwave that swept over also forced the 4 Death Eaters around him to retreat, making it impossible for them to organize an effective counterattack in the first place. God's sharpness. Harry waved his wand again, pointing at a Death Eater whose steps were a little flustered under the airwave. The Death Eater was busy escaping the residual power of the exploding curse, but did not notice that Harry's wand had already pointed at him, and the invisible blade instantly cut off his head. The remaining 3 Death Eaters were a little dizzy. They did not expect that they had 5 people, and the opponent was just a little wizard wearing a Gryffindor wizard robe, but they lost 2 people in just a few rounds. Avada Kedavra. A Death Eater roared regardless, and he raised his wand. Harry chuckled, and in a flash, he appeared 5 meters away, avoiding the killing curse. Perhaps there were restrictions on the anti-apparition spell in Avery Manor, but outside the area covered by the protective magic, Harry's apparition was not restricted at all. Even though Harry did not apply for the apparition test in advance like Irina, after practicing apparition for several months, he had long been able to perform apparition stably in battle without the phenomenon of splitting. The moment Harry's feet landed on the ground, he raised his wand and fired another divine sharp shadowless. However, the Death Eater who released the killing curse, when he saw Harry's wand pointed at him, thought it was not good and subconsciously dodged to the side. This prevented the divine sharp shadowless, which was originally heading straight for the Death Eater's heart, from killing him directly, but instead cut off one of his arms. Scarlet blood splashed out, adding a bit of madness to the battle. The other 2 Death Eaters pointed their wands at Harry, and several black magics as dark as ink broke through the air. Harry apparated again, and with the sound of an explosion, he appeared behind one of the Death Eaters who was casting the dark magic. Harry calmly placed the wand in his hand against the back of the Death Eater, and the corner of his mouth raised more and more. Feeling the wand against his back, the Death Eater stiffened and dropped his wand, indicating that he had given up resistance, and hoped that Harry would spare his life. But, Mr. Death Eater, you don't think I will let you go, do you? Smash to pieces. Harry's teasing voice sounded, and a crushing spell exploded against the back of the Death Eater. A huge bloody hole appeared at the heart of the Death Eater, and the Death Eater's body slowly fell down. Seeing such a bloody scene, the only 2 remaining Death Eaters wanted to cry, but had no tears. Who is the Dark Wizard? Exclamation mark. The 2 Death Eaters felt that compared with Harry, they were like innocent and stupid students, while Harry was the evil Dark Wizard. Looking at Harry, whose mouth corners were wildly raised, and bloodthirsty murderous intent flashed in his eyes, the 2 Death Eaters' hands holding their wands began to tremble. Ha 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 ha. Shadowless. Harry laughed wildly, waving his wand, and cast another shadowless curse, slicing off the head of the Death Eater with a broken arm. Harry's eyes turned to the last Death Eater, who was so scared that he lost control of his bladder, and liquid could be seen flowing down the Death Eater's trouser legs. I'm sorry, Mr. Death Eater. For the sake of greater peace in the wizarding world, I can only send you on your way. Thunder explosion. Harry said in an extremely gentle voice, and he lightly threw out an orange-red beam of light, and then stopped looking at the Death Eater, letting the flames that swept up devour the Death Eater's body. The airwaves generated by the explosion blew Harry's wizard robe high up, like a Superman flying in the air. Harry walked to the edge of the protective magic of Avery Manor. He poked his wand forward lightly, as if he hit an obstacle. Then, Harry lifted his wand upward. Just like a curtain being lifted, the hidden magic of Avery Manor was completely ineffective, and the manor appeared in front of Harry. The protective magic was triggered, which made Voldemort and the Death Eaters in Avery Castle feel the arrival of the invader. Before Harry entered Avery Manor, hundreds of figures appeared in his field of vision. Among these figures, the leader was Voldemort in black robes with scholar eyes like snakes. Harry Potter. Voldemort looked at Harry standing at the door of the manor in surprise. Chapter 720. No longer predicted, and no longer observed. When he sensed that the protective magic of Avery Manor was destroyed, he was actually a little uneasy in his heart. He guessed that it might be Rollo who found his foothold, and planned to kill him. But he didn't expect that the one who broke into Avery Manor alone was not any of the demon-level wizards he imagined, but his old enemy in the prophecy, Harry Potter. It's a surprise, Voldemort. Harry sneered and stepped into Avery Manor. It's a surprise that I came here, not Lin or Irina. Voldemort looked at Harry, who was covered in blood, with a few bloodshot eyes and a crazy look in his emerald green eyes. He said in a deep voice, "You are looking for death, Potter." "Yes." Harry laughed. "I'm looking for death, but even if I die, you will not have an easy life." Ha 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 ha. Harry laughed and walked forward, and every time he took a step forward, a silent and powerful explosion spell would be thrown out from his wand, and fly in the direction of the Death Eaters. Those Death Eaters never thought that Harry would dare to attack them with a spell in front of Voldemort, their master. In an instant, the flames and explosions everywhere blew the Death Eaters to pieces. More than 10 Death Eaters died under Harry's sudden explosion spell. Seeing Harry so reckless, Voldemort's face became ugly. Voldemort pointed at Harry coldly and shouted, "Avada Kedavra." The green beam broke through the air and turned into thousands of tiny green threads in the air. The Avada lightning chain was constantly changing its direction in the air. No matter how Harry moved, how he tried to avoid the attack of the Avada lightning chain, those tiny green threads would constantly adjust their angles in the air and fix their targets on Harry. This was a combination of Voldemort's Avada lightning chain and the 1,000 miles tracking death curse. Harry knew that he had no way to avoid it. I love the wizarding world. Looking at the incoming green light, Harry smiled freely. He put his wand back into his waist, then opened his arms and embraced the incoming killing curse. The thousands of green threads finally gathered together and bombarded Harry. Under the bombardment of the killing curse, Harry's whole body turned green and emitted a green light. Then, Harry fell down. Looking at his destined enemy falling down, Voldemort's mouth corners rose wildly until he showed a rampant smile. He laughed more and more happily. Ha 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 ha. Harry Potter is dead. See. My servants, Harry Potter died in my hands. Hearing Voldemort's laughter, the Death Eaters around him didn't care about those who fell down. They laughed and responded to Voldemort loudly. Voldemort was even happier. But at this moment, a flash of fire stopped the smiles of Voldemort and the hundreds of Death Eaters around him. A figure wearing a dark red wizard robe appeared beside Harry, who was lying on the ground, accompanied by the burning of golden red flames. Voldemort's expression became uncertain again, and he growled, "Lin Raoul." Looking at Voldemort's hideous face in the air, Lin took off his hat and saluted Voldemort like a gentleman, chuckled and said, "Congratulations, Tom Riddle, you destroyed your last Horcrux yourself." Before Voldemort could react, Lin smiled and grabbed Harry's arm, who was lying on the ground, and the golden red flame spread again, wrapping the two figures in it. When the golden red flame dissipated, the two figures also disappeared from the spot. Only the panicked Voldemort was left, and he whispered to himself in disbelief, "The last Horcrux? What does that mean? Did they destroy my other Horcruxes? Impossible. Impossible." On the other side, Lin used the flame of Nirvana to apparate and took Harry back to Hogwarts Castle and brought him into the room of requirement. In the room of requirement, Irina had been waiting for a long time. "How is it?" Irina walked over quickly, lifted Harry's body with the levitation charm, and floated to the sofa in the room of requirement and put him down. Lin nodded at her and said, "Everything went well. Voldemort's killing curse hit Harry, but Harry's vital signs are still there. It seems that Voldemort's killing curse acted on the Horcrux in Harry's head." Irina finally breathed a sigh of relief. She whispered, "In this way, the content of the prophecy is also completed. To destroy the Horcrux in Harry's mind, all you need to do is let Harry get the ownership of the Elder Wand, and then let anyone hold the Elder Wand and recite the killing curse to Harry. This task can be easily completed by either Lin or Irina." But why did Lin and Irina go to such great lengths to design so many events that are linked together just to let the Elder Wand fall into Voldemort's hands, and then let Voldemort personally use the Elder Wand to cast the killing curse on Harry? All this is to fulfill Professor Trelawney's prophecy. According to the prophecy, the child born at the end of July, that is, Harry, will kill Voldemort or be killed by Voldemort. Then, Voldemort recited the killing curse to Harry and hit Harry with the killing curse, which completed the prophecy of killing Harry. Of course, that is only the fact seen from the third perspective, that is, the observer's perspective. In fact, it was not Harry who died, but the soul fragment of Voldemort in Harry's mind, which was Voldemort's Horcrux and the last line of defense to kill Voldemort. In a sense, Harry killed Voldemort, not directly, but indirectly. It's like in a certain battle royale, a character uses a frying pan to rebound the bullets shot by the enemy, and after killing the enemy, the head will be counted on the character. Harry used the characteristic of the Elder Wand that would not kill himself, and let Voldemort's killing curse act on the soul fragment of Voldemort in his mind, which completed the process of Harry killing Voldemort in the prophecy. At this point, everything in the prophecy has happened, and this prophecy believed by countless people has come to an end. From this moment on, everything that happens in this world will no longer be predicted or observed. In other words, everything that happens in this world is no longer predetermined by heaven, but depends on human efforts. Voldemort no longer has to be killed by Harry. Lin can kill him. Irina can kill him. Anyone can kill him completely at the right time. Chapter 721 Harry, I formally invite you to join us. After an unknown amount of time, Harry, who was lying on the sofa, finally woke up slowly. Harry looked at Lin and Irina, who were sitting around the coffee table not far away and drinking tea, in disbelief. He asked, Lin, Irina, why are you here? No. Where am I? Am I not dead? Lin glanced at Harry, feeling a little strange. If nothing else had happened, after Harry was hit by Voldemort's killing curse, his soul would have entered the King's Cross station he had constructed. In the King's Cross station he had constructed, he would have seen the soul fragments of the dead Voldemort and Dumbledore, who was about to embark on another great journey. Harry should have learned about his situation from Dumbledore, knowing that he was not actually dead, but the soul fragments of Voldemort who had died. However, judging from Harry's current reaction, he did not seem to have experienced all of the above, and he felt incredible that he was still alive. Lin stood up and walked slowly towards Harry, clapping his hands gently and said, Harry, congratulations on getting rid of the Horcrux in your head. I'm also glad to see that you've made up your mind to go to Avery Manor alone to die. Looking at Harry's stunned look, Lin added, oh, by the way, your performance in the battle against the Death Eaters in the Airy Forest and your fearlessness in front of Voldemort after entering Avery Manor really impressed me. Listening to Lin's words, Harry asked blankly, did you see it all? Lin smiled and affirmed, I saw it all. Harry was stunned. After a long while, Harry reacted. He widened his eyes and asked, so, Lin, this is all part of your plan, right? Including my death and the destruction of the Horcrux? Lin said calmly, this is a joint decision made by me, Irina, and Professor Dumbledore. Whether it is the last lesson Professor Dumbledore left you, or old Barty taking the Elder Wand, but accidentally letting the Elder Wand be stolen by the Death Eaters, and then letting Voldemort get the Elder Wand and use the killing curse on you, it was all part of our plan. Harry was even more confused, and he asked, what does that have to do with the Elder Wand? If Voldemort gets the Elder Wand, Voldemort's strength will certainly be greatly enhanced. Why are you doing this? Before Lin could answer, Irina said with a smile, that's because the current owner of the Elder Wand is you. I'm the owner of the Elder Wand. Harry didn't understand. Why me? How could it be me? Wait. Suddenly, an idea flashed in Harry's head. He seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but widen his eyes. Harry asked in shock, Irina, when you sent me away to buy ice cream that day, the Rookwood I met on the road was actually Professor Dumbledore in disguise? Lin and Irina looked at each other and nodded to Harry. Harry suddenly felt a sense of faith collapse, especially when he recalled the scene when Professor Dumbledore, whom he respected so much, laughed strangely in front of him. Even though Professor Dumbledore was facing Rookwood at that time, it was really unacceptable to Harry. So, Harry said with some difficulty, you use this to transfer the ownership of the Elder Wand to me, and use the characteristics of the Elder Wand that would not harm its owner to ensure that Voldemort would only kill his own soul, not me. Irina clapped her hands happily and said, congratulations, you guessed everything right. Lin walked up and stretched out a hand to Harry. He just said calmly, if the pocket anchor I give you represents an interview invitation to join us, then, after you decide to make yourself the last sacrifice and die alone, using your life as a bargaining chip to destroy Voldemort's last Horcrux, Harry, I formally invite you to join us. Although Lin founded the DA army and has a number of more than 200 outstanding young wizards, in the eyes of Lin and Irina, the members of the DA army are not equivalent to the members of their organization, but the reserve of their organization. Even the holders of the pocket anchors appointed by Lin are also development targets to be examined, rather than truly belonging to their organization. For now, the wizards belonging to Lin and Irina's organization, besides them, are only Irving and Old Barty, and they have all made an unbreakable oath with Lin, and are their loyal partners. The development targets that Lin and Irina plan to bring into the organization in the near future include the savior Harry Potter, the future leader of the evil Longbottom, the genius Little Witch Hermione Granger, the alchemy genius Weasley twins, Astoria who has the potential to advance to the level of Demon Lord, and Andy River and Elsa Jones who have clean backgrounds and have not yet fully formed their values. As for Ron, Luna, Ginny, Cedric and Draco who also got the pocket anchor, they are also the development targets of Lin and Irina, but compared with the former, they still need to be observed, and Lin and Irina do not plan to recruit them immediately. Join you? Harry looked very interested. What do I need to do? Or, what do I promise? Lin said softly, it's very simple, an unbreakable oath. You should know what it means. Hearing Lin's words, Harry's face showed a serious look. He nodded and said, I know very well, but I accept. Very good. Lin nodded. He turned to look at Irina, smiled teasingly. Irina, you come and make an unbreakable oath with Harry. After all, he is the member you developed. Irina smiled and nodded. She stretched out her slender hand and held Harry's hand. Lin came between the two. He would serve as a witness to this unbreakable oath. Irina gazed into Harry's emerald green eyes, and she asked softly, Harry Potter, are you willing to be our comrade in arms forever, and never give up, or betray us, no matter how the situation changes? Harry heard the subtext of Irina's words, but he did not waver at all. He nodded and said firmly, I do. As Harry's words fell, a thin, dazzling tongue of fire spurted out from the tip of Lin's wand that was held in the hands of the two of them, like a red-hot metal wire, wrapped around Irina and Harry's clasped hands. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 720 To the eve of the decisive battle. Irina continued to ask, Harry Potter, are you willing to do your best to improve your strength and dedicate everything to the possible war in the future? Harry nodded again and said, I do. The second tongue of fire spurted out from the top of Lin's wand, entwined with the first tongue of fire, forming a thin chain that flashed with golden red light. Irina paused for a long time before speaking again. She asked, Harry Potter, are you willing to abide by our beliefs, keep our secrets, and not let anyone outside the organization get any information about our organization? Even if that person is your partner, elder, or family member. Harry was stunned. He understood that this oath meant that he could not tell anyone outside the organization anything about his joining Lin and Irina's organization. And this so-called anyone naturally included Ron and Hermione. Harry looked at Irina with a complicated look. He nodded again and whispered, I do. The last oath was concluded, and the third tongue of fire spurted out, illuminated everyone's face. Dazzling flames spurted out of the wand, intertwined with the two flames in front, and tightly wrapped around the two hands of Irina and Harry, like a rope, like a snake spewing flames. The contract is done. Lin smiled and put her hand on it. Welcome to join, Harry. Irina continued Lin's words and said, we will share our intelligence with you. Our resources will be inclined towards you, and our plan will run through you and me. After this day, Harry officially joined Lin and Irina's organization, and became one of them. In the following months, although there were no traces of the Death Eaters in the British magic world, the Ministry of Magic continued to receive intelligence that dark wizards from the European magic world such as Germany and France had sneaked into the British magic world in various ways. However, after sneaking into the British magic world, those dark wizards seemed to have completely lost their traces. Even if the Auror office was dispatched collectively, they could not find the whereabouts of these dark wizards. In just a few months, more than 2,000 dark wizards sneaked into the British magic world, and the last place they appeared before disappearing was near the Airy Forest. Even though the Ministry of Magic could not give an accurate answer, Lin and Irina knew that those dark wizards must have joined the Death Eaters. This also means that the Death Eaters controlled by Voldemort have expanded by more than 2,000 people, and Voldemort's power has grown again. However, it is not only Voldemort who recruits soldiers in these days. As the British magic world becomes more and more turbulent, the Auror office of the Ministry of Magic has also begun to expand. The Auror office which originally had only more than 100 auras, has trained nearly 600 auras in these few months. Of course, just like the uneven magic levels of those Death Eaters, the magic levels of these auras are also difficult to guarantee. The average magic level of the nearly 500 new auras is not even as strong as the weakest members of the DA army. But even so, these auras gathered together, and they are also a powerful force that the British magic world cannot ignore. On the other side, in Hogwarts Castle, the organization founded by Lin and Irina also officially sent invitations to Neville, Hermione, Astoria and the Weirlight Winds in the past few months. On the day when the end-of-year exams at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry began, the number of members of Lin and Irina's organization also successfully broke through the double digits and reached 10 people. Although this number is not large, every member who joins their organization, according to Lin and Irina's evaluation, has the potential to be promoted to a Demon King level wizard. With the arrival of the exam week, the Ministry of Magic sent professors from the Wizard Examination Administration to Hogwarts Castle to organize the OWL's exams for 5th year wizards and the Newt's exams for 7th year graduates. Unlike the final exams that Harry and others were going to take, Irina, who applied to take the Newt's exam in advance and was preparing to graduate early, came to the same examination room with Lin. Faced with an exam content that was 1 grade higher than hers, Irina completed the theoretical exams of each subject with ease, and in the practical exams, Irina's performance made the professors who served as examiners exclaim again and again. As a Demon King level wizard, Irina's performance in the practical exams was elegant and perfect, and simply impeccable. The same was true for Lin. As the exam week passed, their Newt's exams were also completed smoothly. After the exam week was over, Lin and Irina had no worries about their grades. After all, they really couldn't imagine what kind of grades they would get besides the O that represented excellent. However, they did not relax because of this. Whether it was the intelligence provided by the Ministry of Magic or the intelligence network of the royal family, they were telling Lin and Irina that Voldemort was about to make a big move. There were more than 3,000 dark wizards who sneaked into the British wizarding world and joined the Death Eaters, and more than 1,000 werewolves and vampires in the British wizarding world had also disappeared. Combined with the dark mark that had appeared over the werewolf village, it is not difficult to guess that they have also become part of the Death Eaters. Even the Forbidden Forest area of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry has recently seen a lot of unusual movements. The Centaurs have repeatedly reported that they have seen traces of the Acromanthus outside the Acromanthus habitat. It seems that the decisive battle is about to begin. Lin looked at the dim sky and murmured in a low voice, "Avery Manor." The once dilapidated Avery Manor was renovated after the dark wizards from various European magic circles came and surrendered to Voldemort. The area of Avery Manor has also expanded to more than 5 times the original size. At this time, there was thick black smoke under Voldemort's black cloak. The black smoke supported Voldemort's body and floated in the air and blew his cloak rustling. Voldemort's scarlet snake pupils stared at the bottom of him. There were more than 3,500 Death Eaters gathered in an orderly manner, as if they were soldiers waiting for inspection. Behind these 3,500 plus Death Eaters, there are nearly 1,000 werewolves and more than 300 vampires. I will lead you to the battle in 3 hours. We will capture Hogwarts Castle and the Ministry of Magic, and we will become the masters of this magical world. Voldemort opened his arms, and he uttered those breathtaking whispers like a demon descending into the world. Chapter 723. We will be the last line of defense of the British wizarding world. Hogwarts Castle. With the blood-red sunset covering the ancient castle, a solemn atmosphere gradually spread. All the professors of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry came to the gate of the castle. In addition to these professors, there were more than 200 members of the DA army. They looked serious and looked at the other side of the bridge. It was a sea of black figures. It was estimated that at least more than 3,000 people were wearing black robes and wearing the silver masks of Death Eaters. They held wands and did not hide their murderous intentions and evil thoughts. And in the air in front of the more than 3,000 people, there was a figure that everyone was familiar with, Voldemort. Looking at the Dark Lord who once made children afraid to cry at night. Even though Voldemort's image was no longer so terrifying in the past few years, some people still trembled subconsciously. In front of the gate of Hogwarts Castle, Lin and Irina stood in front of everyone with wands in their hands. The two looked solemnly at Voldemort and the more than 3,000 Death Eaters across the bridge. They understood that the decisive battle they had been waiting for a long time had finally arrived. Tell old Barty what happened here in Hogwarts Castle, and let him prepare in advance. I have a feeling that Voldemort will not give up the British Ministry of Magic. Lin turned his head and said to Irving in a deep voice. There seemed to be a flash of light in Irving's eyes. He nodded vigorously and took out a special double-sided mirror from his pocket. Irina turned around and looked at Professor McGonagall. Her cold voice rang out. Professor McGonagall, please go back to the castle first and help the students evacuate in advance. They are the hope of the future of the magic world and should not be buried in this meaningless war. As she said, Irina wiped her left hand at her waist, and a huge box appeared between her and Professor McGonagall. I saw that this huge box was full of spoons. Every spoon in this box was filled with strange light. There was no doubt that these spoons were all the keys to the portal made by Irina. The keys to the portal in this box were estimated to be more than 3,000, enough for Professor McGonagall to evacuate all the little wizards in the castle in advance. Professor McGonagall frowned and said, Albus is still. After Albus died, no one can lift the spatial blockade of Hogwarts Castle for us. Even the anywhere door key you made cannot break the restriction of Hogwarts Castle. Irina smiled lightly and said softly, take the students to the room of requirement, Professor. There is a secret passage connecting to the Hog's Head Inn in Hogsmeade Village. After you get there, activate the anywhere door key and send the students away. Upon hearing this, Professor McGonagall did not ask Irina how she knew the secret passage. She nodded solemnly and turned to walk into the castle. She believed in Irina and Lin, and believed that they could protect Hogwarts before she came back. After Professor McGonagall left, Lin also turned around. His eyes passed over the professors standing around him and looked at the more than 200 members of the DA army. The members of the DA army revealed determination in their eyes. Even though some of them were shaking with their wands, not even one of them asked to evacuate with the students in the castle. Even though the youngest among them was only in the 3rd grade. Are you scared? Lin En looked at them and said softly, I mean, in this upcoming war, everyone may be sacrificed, and everyone may stay on this battlefield forever. Hearing Lin En's words, someone in the DA army shook slightly, but he still clenched his teeth and did not respond. Until Lin En's eyes fell on Neville. As a member of the organization and the future leader of the DA army, Neville knew what he should say. Under the gaze of all the DA soldiers, Neville walked out and said calmly, are you afraid? Of course we are afraid. We are afraid of death, afraid that we will never see our family and friends again, afraid that our souls will remain forever on a battlefield full of blood and tears, unable to be free. Neville looked around at everyone, and his tone suddenly became high-spirited. He said loudly, but that is not a reason for us to retreat. If we retreat, we cannot escape death, and those damn Death Eaters will chase us to the ends of the earth. If we retreat, then we will never see our family and friends again. Those evil Death Eaters will cruelly kill them, your partners, family, and even your future children who may have just been born, and are not even a month old. If we retreat, then our souls will be forever imprisoned in a cage called cowardice, and will never be freed. Even if we die, our names will be engraved on the pillar of shame. The DA army is called an army instead of an office or a club, because we are going to be the wizard army of the British wizarding world. We will stand here and guard everything we want to guard. We will be the last line of defense of the British wizarding world. We don't have any way out. We will either die in battle, or kill all the damn Death Eaters. The debt of blood and tears must be repaid with more blood. The numerous crimes committed by the Death Eaters over the years should also have a result. Neville's voice was deafening. Even the most timid members of the DA army straightened their chests, and the hands holding the wands no longer trembled. Well said. Lin walked up and patted Neville on the shoulder gently. Neville. After patting Neville on the shoulder, Lin walked back and stood side by side with Irina. He looked at the dozen professors and more than 200 DA army members in front of him. He raised his hand holding the magic wand and said loudly, everyone, follow me to cast a protective magic for Hogwarts Castle. Irina responded first. She pointed the magic wand in her hand to the sky and whispered the spell, Super Armor Protection. Solid as a rock. Expel the enemy. After Irina, everyone in front of the castle raised their wands, and one after another protective magic flew out from their wands, flying to the sky above Hogwarts castle. Super armor protection. Solid as a rock. Expel the enemy. Super armor protection. Solid as a rock. Expel the enemy. Super armor protection. Solid as a rock. Expel the enemy. Hundreds of beams of light gathered together and continuously intertwined in the sky to form a huge shield. This translucent shield exuded a milky white halo. It was like a hemispherical cover, turning the entire Hogwarts castle upside down. Chapter 724. The position deployment is completed and reinforcement arrive. The area where everyone was covered by this huge shield, which extended all the way to the entrance of the bridge before stopping. Just as everyone worked together to set up this huge shield, Voldemort's voice penetrated everything. The voice was high-pitched, cold, and clear, as if it came from their ears. I know you are preparing to resist. Your efforts are useless. You are not my opponent. I don't want to kill you. I respect the professors of Hogwarts very much. Or rather, I don't want wizards to bleed. Give up all resistance. None of you will be hurt. Give up all resistance. I will keep the school safe. Give up all resistance. You will be rewarded. I will only wait until the full moon rises. If you insist, I will let the stars fall and the earth wail. Voldemort's voice was like the whisper of a devil, ringing in everyone's ears. But no one paid attention to his words, and everyone was working together to set up this last line of defense. After the shield was completely closed, Seamus Finnegan came forward, his eyes resting on the bridge in the distance. He said to Lin, "Lin, do you need me to blow up this bridge? Without this bridge, those Death Eaters will lose the only shortcut to reach Hogwarts Castle." Hearing this, Lin followed Seamus's gaze and looked at the bridge that connected the high ground where Hogwarts Castle was located and another high ground where Voldemort and the more than 3,000 Death Eaters were located. This was the only bridge connecting the two high grounds. If Seamus blew up this bridge, then the Death Eaters who could not use black smoke to fly within the territory of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry would have to walk across the high ground with a height difference of more than 100 meters. Facing Seamus's expectant eyes, Lin shook his head, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. "No, it's not necessary." Lin turned around and looked at Professor Flitwick. "Professor, can you please bring out the all-chemical ballista equipped by Hogwarts Castle?" Hogwarts Castle purchased a large amount of military munitions from Wheel Eye Arms, and the person in charge of keeping and dispatching these munitions was Professor Flitwick, the Dean of Ravenclaw. Among these munitions, in addition to those all-chemical firearms, based on hot weapons, there are also some all-chemical weapons, based on cold weapons. Just like the all-chemical ballista mentioned by Lin. Even though both have been transformed by Fred and George's alchemy, the power of hot weapons is always stronger than that of cold weapons. Therefore, compared with the large-scale purchase of all-chemical weapons such as all-chemical heavy machine guns, all-chemical howitzers, and all-chemical pistols, Hogwarts Castle only purchased one cold weapon all-chemical weapon such as the all-chemical ballista. Hearing Lin's words, Professor Flitwick was stunned at first, then seemed to think of something. He asked excitedly, "Lin, what do you mean?" Lin smiled and affirmed, "Yes, this bridge is narrow. Only 3 to 5 wizards can pass side by side, and the alchemical crossbow has a strong penetrating power, and it is also enchanted with the effect of not being able to use magic to heal wounds. We can use the alchemical crossbow to string all those stupid Death Eaters together. As for those who slipped through the net, we have to trouble Professor Flitwick to push out another 50 alchemical heavy machine guns. Let the DA Army's comrades control them and shoot them all." Lin said so. Before the start of this decisive battle, among the more than 200 members of the DA Army, only more than 100 members could pass Lin's high difficulty mode illusion test. In order to minimize his own casualties, Lin did not intend to let those members who failed to pass the high difficulty mode illusion test hold their wands and fight with those vicious Death Eaters. This was also the plan that Lin En had made when he launched the difficult mode illusion test. As for what the remaining more than 100 people should do, the alchemical weapons purchased in large quantities by Hogwarts Castle gave the answer. Under Lin En's arrangement, more than 100 members who passed the difficult mode illusion test, including Harry, Ron, Hermione, Irving, Astoria, Luna, Andy, Elsa, Draco, Cedric, Ginny and Neville, all guarded the various organs and roads of Hogwarts Castle. Among the remaining more than 100 people, 3 were responsible for operating the alchemical crossbow, and 50 were responsible for operating the alchemical heavy machine gun. Not only that, Professor Flitwick also took out 20 alchemical howitzers from the warehouse with the floating spell, and these 20 alchemical howitzers were operated by 40 people respectively. It is hard to imagine that this is only less than half of the arms in the warehouse of Hogwarts Castle. As for the remaining dozen people, they are responsible for wandering between various positions, transporting ammunition to various positions, and responsible for logistics work. No one questioned whether the tasks assigned to them were fair or glorious. They understood that this was a real war, not a game of playing house. After all the positions were deployed, Professor McGonagall also came back. What surprised Lin and Irina was that Professor McGonagall did not come back alone, but brought a lot of reinforcement. Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, Nymphadora Tonks, Kingsley Shacklebolt, Alastair Moody, Arthur Weasley, Bill Weasley, Molly Weasley. Almost all the members of the Order of the Phoenix were present. In addition to the members of the Order of the Phoenix, there were also other holders of pocket anchors. Irina's teacher Newt Scamander rushed over from his villa, with a curled winged demon wrapped around his wrist, and a leopard followed him closely. Just by looking at these dangerous magical animals around him, it can be seen that this old man is not easy to mess with. Lin's teacher, Wallison Green, also used the pocket anchor point to rush over from the French magic world. He was shining with golden light, and 5 alchemical arrays were rotating around his body, ready to go. Fred and George also rushed over from Diagon Alley at this critical moment. They were holding various alchemical weapons in their hands. Not only that, there were nearly 50 human-shaped alchemical puppets standing behind them, and those alchemical puppets were also holding different types of alchemical firearms in their hands. It can be said that except for old Barty Crouch, who was the Minister of Magic, and had to guard the Ministry of Magic, all the holders of the pocket anchor points have gathered together. Welcome, everyone. Lin walked up and stretched out his hand to everyone with a smile. Chapter 725, Death Eaters attack the Ministry of Magic. Old Barty's defensive deployment. At the same time, London, the British Ministry of Magic. After learning that Voldemort had launched a decisive battle and led more than 3,000 Death Eaters to attack Hogwarts Castle, Old Barty solemnly summoned all the high-ranking officials of the Ministry of Magic. He told everyone about Voldemort's movements. Since the Elder Wand was stolen by the Death Eaters, Old Barty took this opportunity to launch a major purge of the Ministry of Magic again, killing all the Death Eaters he had deliberately kept before. Therefore, Old Barty did not need to worry that there would be undercover Death Eaters among the high-ranking officials of the Ministry of Magic present, and spread the content of their conversation so that those Death Eaters would be on guard. Everyone, the Ministry of Magic is now in a critical moment of survival. For the victory of the Ministry of Magic, and for a better peace in the British magic world, I will take full charge and be responsible for the upcoming war against the Death Eaters. Old Barty stood up and said in a deep voice to the high-ranking officials of the Ministry of Magic present. No one refuted Old Barty's words. They all saw how resolute Old Barty had been since he took office and the changes in the Ministry of Magic. Old Barty quickly gave the order, pass my order down. Suspend all business of the Ministry of Magic, escort the people who are still in the Ministry of Magic to leave, and then seal off the entire Ministry of Magic Hall. The British Ministry of Magic is located underground in London. If the Death Eaters want to attack the British Ministry of Magic under the premise of concealing their presence, then their only way is to approach directly to the Ministry of Magic Hall, or to arrive at the Ministry of Magic Hall by taking the fireplace. Urgently evacuate the people in the hall, and then let the auras set up the anti-apparition spell, so that the fireplace can become the only way for the Death Eaters to reach the British Ministry of Magic. Old Barty did not think about destroying the fireplace directly and blocking all ways to enter the Ministry of Magic. But he was worried that those crazy Death Eaters would not care about the International Statute of Secrecy at all and bombard the ground with powerful spells in the City of London. and directly penetrate all the way from the ground to the Ministry of Magic. So, old Barty planned to surround 3 sides and leave one side, leaving a way for the Death Eaters to reach the Ministry of Magic Hall, so as to ensure that those Death Eaters would not do anything radical. Under the command of old Barty, more than 100 auras wandered throughout the Ministry of Magic. They were responsible for guarding the various organs and roads of the Ministry of Magic, and casting protective magic such as the anti-apparition charm to ensure that the Death Eaters would not attack the Ministry of Magic from other directions. The remaining nearly 500 auras gathered in the hall of the Ministry of Magic. All chemical heavy machine guns purchased from the Wheel-Eye Arms shop were pushed into the hall to form an all-chemical heavy machine gun position. A full 100 all-chemical heavy machine guns were placed side by side. This was not because the British Ministry of Magic only had 100 all-chemical heavy machine guns, but because the size of the whole of the Ministry of Magic was only enough for 100 all-chemical heavy machine guns to be placed side by side. Each all-chemical heavy machine gun was operated by 2 new auras. One aura was responsible for operating the all-chemical heavy machine gun to shoot, while the other aura was responsible for providing it with ammunition supplies. The magic level of these new auras is generally not high, so old Barty did not force them to grab their wands and fight the Death Eaters, but let them fight with all chemical firearms to achieve higher results. In addition to these 200 auras, there are nearly 50 auras wandering in the positions. They are responsible for providing logistics and replacing the auras responsible for operating the all-chemical heavy machine guns after they die. The all-chemical firearms purchased by the Ministry of Magic from the Wheel-Eye Arms shop are not just the all-chemical heavy machine gun. In order to prevent accidental injuries to their own people, the powerful munitions such as the all-chemical howitzer were not used, but among the remaining auras, there are 100 people holding various types of all-chemical rifles. They stand behind the all-chemical heavy machine gun position and are ready to shoot at any time. There are also nearly 50 new auras hiding in various corners of the Ministry of Magic Hall that are difficult to notice. They lie on the ground, holding an all-chemical sniper rifle, and their eyes are against the scope. As for the last 100 auras, they are all the backbone members of the Aura Office, and their magic level has reached the level of elite auras. Therefore, these 100 auras are also the only auras in the Aura Office who fight with wands. After all the defense measures in the hall of the Ministry of Magic were deployed, old Barty also came to the hall to supervise the battle. He stood behind an all-chemical heavy machine gun, holding the wand nervously, and his deep eyes stared at the fireplace in the distance. As the sunset outside fell, the full moon was about to rise. Half an hour before the full moon hung in the night sky, the Death Eaters launched an attack on the British Ministry of Magic. In an instant, dozens of black smoke continued to explode at the door of the fireplace, and figures in black robes walked out of the fireplace one after another, and walked towards the direction of the hall of the Ministry of Magic. These figures in black robes all wore silver masks exclusive to Death Eaters. They exuded an evil aura, and the eyes behind the silver masks were full of bloodthirsty murderous intent. But within a few breaths, more than 300 Death Eaters appeared in the passage, almost filling the entire passage. These Death Eaters also marched towards the Ministry of Magic Hall in an orderly manner like a regular army. Above these Death Eaters, there was another figure wearing a black robe and a silver mask, held up in the air by black smoke, looking down at the auras in the distance. Old Barty Crouch. I didn't expect that you, who cherish your life so much, didn't flee in the face of danger, but chose to stay here in person. What prompted your change today? Let me think. If I'm not mistaken, it couldn't be the master behind this old dog of yours, Lin En. The figure looked coldly at old Barty behind the all-chemical heavy machine gun position, sneering and mocking. Hearing the words of the figure, old Barty recognized the other party's identity, and there was a bit of coldness in his eyes. McNeil. Voldemort asked you to lead these Death Eaters here. Did he want you to die and all be buried here? If I'm not mistaken, Voldemort and the main force of the Death Eaters are probably confronting Lin and others outside the Hogwarts castle, right? Then why did he send you here? Could it be that he wants to borrow you and all of your lives to distract Lin and others? After all, Voldemort is not sure that he can fight against 2 Demon Lord level wizards alone, right? Old Barty looked at McNeil with a sneer. Every word he said made McNeil feel like falling into an icy cave. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.